February 8th. The starting point was the crystal cave on the first floor, an area that serves as a sort of tutorial, the first place you experience when entering the labyrinth. This is the first time I've experienced this during a breakdown. Normally, 9th level monsters should appear, which even an ordinary person could defeat if they had a weapon. But, during a meltdown, none of that exists. Grower. Higher level monsters invaded the cave where only low level monsters, like goblins and gnomes, should be. Well, I guess that's one of the unique charms you experience during a collapse. Not that it means anything, of course. Yes, go ahead and rest. I completely ignored them and walked past all the monsters that bared their teeth at me upon suddenly discovering my presence. There was an incident along the way, but the basic plan didn't change one bit. Thud. I ran. Until I found a group of survivors to take shelter with, or until I found the ones I was looking for. Thud. Thud. As I advanced, breaking through the ranks of monsters, notoriously and their corresponding monsters kept appearing. But, whatever happens, I stubbornly broke through those barriers and forged my own path. The same course of action I followed when I separated from the Anabata clan, although things are different from that time. Sariak. The monsters' claws and teeth, as well as their spears and blades, pierced and embedded themselves in my resilient flesh. This happened because of my new passive ability, Absolute Pain. 50% of the damage received is converted into fixed damage. The damage calculation formula for this skill is quite clear. First, it subtracts 50% of the pure base damage you would deal by hiding a training dummy with 0 resistance. The remainder is affected by the resistance and armor values before the damage is dealt. And, as a result, oh, shit. It hurts so much I feel like I'm going to die. It wasn't as bad as with a Lord of Tears, but this constant, unbearable pain was driving me crazy. Curse. My fighting spirit was being undermined. In situations where I normally wouldn't have even retreated and would have maintained a so what mentality regardless of what happened, I now found myself unconsciously retreating as I anticipated the intense pain to come. During the Lord of Tears raid, I desperately held on because I would be freed as soon as the raid ended, but that's not the case now. My body instinctively chooses to dodge rather than take hits, a flaw a tank should never have. I need to get used to this as quickly as possible. Okay, in that sense, I'll consider this time alone as a period of adjustment, Uarg. Like someone who dives into icy water to train, I deliberately took hits that I could easily have avoided. The injuries accumulated and the pain increased proportionally, but even so, there is absolutely no chance of me dying. Your HP has reached 100%. No matter how badly I was beaten and cut, my body instantly recovered to its original state. Even if 3rd and 4th level monsters were trying their hardest to kill me, my body recovered as if I had become immortal. Of course, I wasn't exactly happy about it. If it weren't for that, I would have only had scratches at most. It wouldn't have hurt that much either. Your HP has reached 100%. Okay, let's stop complaining. Depending on the situation, there might be some disadvantages, but my basic tanking ability isn't much different from what it was before. Like, more or less 0, you could say. However, my damage has actually increased significantly. You launched swing. My raw damage output was always high because of my items and natural strength, but since I lacked physical penetration and that kind of setup, my hammer strikes were largely ineffective against monsters with high durability. Quadjik, with a blow that, to me, is practically a basic attack, even if 4th level monster staggers as if it had suffered a concussion. 50% of the damage dealt is converted into fixed damage. Of course, no matter how hard I hit them, I can't kill them with a single blow. Seriously, how much HP does a 4th level monster have? Well, if I really concentrated and kept hitting them, I could probably kill them several times faster than normal, but getting beaten up in the meantime would be a disadvantage, so I'll pass. Yes, even if I decided to think of it as a kind of training, being surrounded and attacked by a group just to collect some mana stones isn't a good trade. And if I need experience points, I can simply use something else. You use the Aegis Dragon Breastplate. Aegis, the creature summoned by the Dragon Breastplate. Unfortunately, however, Absolute Pain does not apply to the longsword strikes of this trusty companion. Of course, the effects associated with items generally apply to essences, but the reverse almost never happens. But that's only a minor problem. Aegis doesn't need fixed damage, its raw damage is absurdly high. The accumulated damage has exceeded a specified limit. Additional use has been granted. As my life rapidly ebbs and flows in real time, the burdens accumulate at an insane rate. Even though I used it right after the recharge time ended, it's already like this. In other words, what I previously considered maximum loads now only takes 5 minutes to reach. Of course, the dimensional collapse environment certainly contributes to this, but that doesn't matter. You defeated a Shredder, plus 6 EXP. You defeated a Vicundus. You defeated a Red Eye. You defeated a Hobgoblin Miner. You defeated a Mother Elephant, The enemies were eliminated whenever I activated the Dragon Chestplate. The thrill and euphoria it gave me were almost insane. It was as if a hardcore game had suddenly changed genre to hack and slash. Remembering the old days when I only got beaten up, I smiled without realizing it, even forgetting the pain. Yet, I'm really going crazy. However, so as not to get carried away by enthusiasm, I must say that this result was, in fact, somewhat expected. I have 7 third-tier essences that create complex synergies, higher-tier numbered items and secret numbered items that didn't even exist in the game. And, to top it all off, I even managed to get a walking essence. Even if you had taken the other essence, he probably still would have gotten that attribute boost, although it would have seemed more suited to shield barbarian than to that damage dealer feel. That thought instantly dampened my enthusiasm, so I changed my train of thought again. Yes, there's no need to get too depressed. It's a problem that can be solved to some extent just by eating some complementary essences, and besides, that approach has better synergy with a draconic breastplate. Could I have bipolar disorder? This thought occurred to me suddenly, but there's no way to avoid it. Pain always drives people crazy. Maybe it's an effect of spirit -150. My emotions keep fluctuating non-stop. That's exactly what I expected, and that's why I refused back then. Dungeon and Stone is a game where you need to develop your character flexibly. Even when I obtained the Ogre Essence, I deviated from my original build, but I accepted it because it was interchangeable. In that context, the Essence of Tears was the same thing. What if this situation had occurred while I was playing? I probably would have accepted the essence the instant it was offered. I wouldn't even have considered flimsy excuses like the ceiling being a little lower or not knowing what additional events might occur if I accepted the offer. And yet, it ended up being that way anyway. So my destiny is not to live an easy and smooth life. Is that it? Still, there was no way to avoid it, because I needed that essence just to survive that situation. Harming Biko was just a bonus. No, wait a minute, did I really screw him over? Now that I think about it, something is bothering me. At the time I was so stunned and had no time to think that I ended up acting on impulse. That bastard would never be so careless, could he? No, impossible. That would be an absurd leap of logic. We're talking about a class essence, something invaluable. There's no way he could use something like that for some kind of trick. Enough of that, it's better to focus on something productive. Whether I want to or not, I need to test that skill too. The character Conjured Stake, an active ability gained by absorbing the Essence of Tears. For reference, this ability has 3 types: physical, spiritual, and special ability. The skill's effect changes depending on which of the 3 attributes is the highest, and, in my case, there's no need to think about which one it would be. Physical. There were no other options. Not only are all my essences focused on the attributes of strength and endurance, but now even my natural regeneration has increased by an impressive 1,500. Poook. At that moment, a transparent stake pierced my stomach. I was surprised for a moment, but I felt no pain. Well, after all, it was just the effect of the ability. Your physical resistance is reduced by 50%, and your natural regeneration increases proportionally to the total value. The effect of the physical version of the stake, natural regeneration increases even more drastically. In fact, with my current resistance attribute, the increase can be as great as when negated is activated. I don't know if I should be happy about this right now. A glass body? No, that's an exaggeration. Soft flesh? Yes, my body, which had already become like tofu, became even softer. Let's call it barbaric slime mode. Poook. Your magic resistance is reduced by 50%, and your natural regeneration increases proportionally to the reduction. But what is this? Why on earth was a second stake driven into the ground? The moment that doubt freezes me, Poook. A third stake flies straight out in front, pierces my abdomen, and goes deep inside. Your soul power is reduced by 50%, and natural regeneration increases proportionally to the reduced value. What is really going on? A black screen in DOS mode. Beep, beep, beep. With the high-pitched sounds, white letters begin to be imprinted in real time onto the black background. Beep, beep, beep. The letters updated very slowly, one vowel, one consonant at a time, as if they were running late. However, the old man sitting before them showed no sign of boredom as he watched the letters appear. He looked intently, as if he were seeing something very interesting. Beep, 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 beep. After staring for a long time at a constantly updating record, the old man finally let out a silent sigh, as if he had just overcome a crucial obstacle. HUU. The old man's sigh sounded both relieved and a little bitter. So, in the end, the protagonist of the story was defined like this. Now all that was left was to watch. Not that there was anything he could have done before that. Anyway, in any case, Nia Raftonia. The old man continued staring at the letters, and he would continue watching. Beep, 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 until the moment when those new lines, which are still being written now, that day would finally reach the end and stop, without deviating, incessantly, rejected the proposal of the Twisted Pilgrim. Soul power has been permanently increased by plus 100, comma, comma, comma. The twisted pilgrim feels compassion for you. Her sadness deepens, comma, 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 comma. Launch dissolution of the stars, comma, 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 comma. The essence of tears penetrates deep into your soul, comma, 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 comma. Special condition, the compassionate one, 1, has been fulfilled. The number of stakes that pass through it increases. The twisted pilgrim disappears from the labyrinth. A new island is added somewhere on the 6th floor. This is an achievement that has been accomplished for the first time. The magnificent mark you left will be engraved on the Stone of Honor and recorded forever. Chapter 859, Tragic News, 2/8. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. Chapter 859, Tragic News, 2/8. I can't understand it. Why did 3 stakes hit me when it should have only been 1? Is the effect in reality a little different from the game? Well, the effect where they scatter into particles of light right after being incorporated seems the same as in the game. This time, the doubt didn't last long either. Not because another stake had been shot from somewhere, but simply because, whir, kig. Seeing my paralyzed body, the monsters surrounding the place began attacking me all at once, leaving me no choice but to writhe in pain. Surprisingly, however, thanks to this, my questions were naturally answered, comma, I don't know why this phenomenon occurs, but, comma, the 3 stakes that have now turned to light and disappeared. These stakes were not merely visual effect glitches, they were all authentic, and how I could tell this was, Kwang. It seemed my magic resistance had decreased, as the magic damage was getting stronger. It will probably be difficult to properly use the scale of greed in this state. Huang. Similarly, my soul power seems to have decreased considerably, as I could feel a sense of emptiness in my heart. The constant feeling of discomfort was bothering me, but, well, the return is more than guaranteed, right? Even with the fangs of a 3rd-level monster embedded deep in my eyeball. Slew up. As soon as the fangs come out, my vision returns immediately. Even considering that after 25 million natural regeneration cycles the side effects of bodily damage disappear, this speed is absurd. Its natural regeneration exceeds 5,000. Therefore, I have come to a conclusion about my current state. Super regeneration bonus. I never imagined that this could activate without a countdown timer. There is. That's ridiculous. The regeneration rate of lost body parts is drastically accelerated. I realized I need to review all of my previous conclusions, comma, Baal. The essence of tears, from now on, is a part of me. I continued advancing through the interior of the labyrinth. Kuang. With each step, the heavy sound of my absurdly large body echoed. Quake. As if drawn to the sound, all sorts of monsters followed me, making bizarre noises. The accumulated pain felt like it would etch wrinkles into my forehead like a permanent tattoo. But, why did I keep laughing? Actually, I knew the answer. It was because I had just tested my new attributes, comma, kakakik. First, the super regeneration bonus. Even if my arm were torn off, all I had to do was tense my muscles for a new arm to grow instantly in a single second. There were absolutely no side effects, not even a slight feeling of stiffness, and I could move it as if it were in its original condition immediately after it had grown back. Of course, this came at a cost. A lost body part has been regenerated. 5% of your HP has been consumed. Whenever super regeneration is used, HP is consumed proportionally to the severity of the injury, but it's not really a loss. I would lose roughly that amount of health if I had an arm severed. More importantly, there was another really crucial point, comma, A short while ago, I encountered a 2nd-level monster and took the opportunity to enter my denied state, and in that state, I used stake to confirm what intrigued me the most. I suspected it, but I never imagined it would actually work. To become weak, the pain, to no longer be able to savor the essence of the walk I longed for, comma, kikik. Well, maybe that just wasn't meant for me. To be honest, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't care at all. From now on, there's only one thing that matters. How to assemble the final combination to take the new shield barbarian to an even higher level. That's all that matters. But that can wait until I get back to the city, take a shower, and can think deeply about the matter. Thud. So I kept running past monsters that could never kill me even if I just lay down and took a nap. Huang. I'm not even startled to see the newly appeared terrain after crossing the dimensional wall. After all, what do you think I am? New shield barbarian. Any trap on any map is fine. I was absolutely confident I wouldn't die, as long as it wasn't the minefield on the 10th floor, with its instant death mechanism that kills without even a countdown. Semicolon. There is, come to think of it, this really does exist, doesn't it? Comma, No, they certainly wouldn't appear. The labyrinth is enormous, and even among those blocks, there are only a few that cause instant death. Thud. Okay, best to ignore that possibility. Even before becoming the new shield barbarian, my plan was simply to run And now I don't think I need to rely on survivor groups anymore. I need to find them. Somewhere in this labyrinth, my companions are scattered. The Armin Adventurers group, along with Aner and Mr. Bear, the Anabata clan, and lastly, Miss Shah. How did she manage to separate herself alone in the middle of all that chaos? At that moment, I felt something approaching from behind. Tatted. But I didn't bother looking back. At the moment, I was also training to receive blows. I wouldn't dodge even if I turned around to check, and after taking so many blows, I realized one thing. It's better not to know what's coming. When I know what's coming, I can't help but involuntarily recoil in anticipation of how much it will hurt. Beep, 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 was there some monster that could make a sound like that? No, more than that, the voice sounds familiar, Bjorn. Hearing my name clearly, I turned around quickly, and at that moment, the person running behind me wrapped their arms around my shoulders, blocking my view. Oh, of course, that wasn't really a problem. I already knew whose voice that was, Miss Shah Karlstein, my teammate since the days of the somewhat hapless team. Anyway, so Hans's effect has worn off, is that it? I didn't expect to find her so soon, Miss Shah, who flew towards me like a throwing weight, started crying like a child the moment she hugged me. Well, not that she was really sobbing, it was more like a little child venting her sorrows by whimpering and throwing a tantrum, but that wasn't a good environment for a conversation, so, swish. First, to ensure I had a clear view, I grabbed Miss Shah by the neck, sat her on my shoulder, and kept running, but it seemed she still hadn't calmed down, I knew you'd be alive, I knew you'd be alive, that's what I should say, thank God, truly, thank God. Miss Shah, overcome with emotion, continued punching the back of my head, you irresponsible barbarian, puck, okay, I can tell how happy she is, and honestly, I was too, what were you doing all this time, Naya? I searched so much and couldn't even find a single hair on your head, puck, okay, I understand, but it would be good if she controlled herself a little. It was fine before, but in my current state, this really hurts. Then, Miss Shah, calm down a little, I almost died several times looking for you, it hurts, so stop for a bit, hurting? My ass, you deserve more, you irresponsible barbarian. You think I'd be happy surviving alone while leaving you behind, Naya? Oh, technically, you weren't the only one who ran away alone, we all ran away together, right? Anyway, I was planning on following you, but things went wrong. Oh, and don't hit me. I have a new essence now, so if you hit me like before, it's going to hurt a lot. After making my opinion perfectly clear, I glanced to the side and saw that Miss Shah, sitting on my shoulder, had a strange expression. It was as if she was thinking, what's wrong with this guy, at first, and then it changed to something like, oh, right, that's the kind of guy he used to be. Of course, after that, she went back to normal, Aner disappeared along with you at that moment. Did you find her, I found Aner, really, Naya? I thought it would be difficult to get everyone back together. Does she think I found Aner right away? Since it's too much work to explain, I omitted the part of the story about using the spirit gate to find her, in any case, things went wrong again and we ended up separating during the last period of stability, what, relax, she's with trustworthy people, so there's nothing to worry about, well, if that's the case, that's not so bad, but what exactly happened, Tisk? I have a lot of questions too, but I think Miss Shah does as well. However, it's too long a story to explain in detail, so I've shortened it this time as well. It was something that just happened, that's all, are you kidding me, Naya? I guess this isn't going to work after all. In the end, I had no choice but to explain in more detail. Oh, of course, if I said I'd found the Lord of Tears and used the leave me behind strategy again, I'd be reprimanded. So, no, seriously, I ran into a strong monster and, unintentionally, ended up falling on my own during the fight, it wasn't an accident at all. I bet it was you being clumsy again. I felt like I was about to get beaten up again, so I changed the subject immediately. The important thing is that you're okay, Miss Shah, I was worried, ever since I heard you had separated and were alone, but, how did you know that, I heard from a survivor I met, they said you were wandering alone looking for me, then, Naya, what a thing, thank you for being okay so far, really, don't talk like that, I'm not a child, I'm happy too, I hope you're well, and even, okay, I think the change of subject worked, now we can get back to the point, okay, now tell me, what happened while I was gone? That's when, for the first time since we'd reunited, Miss Shah's machine gun-like chatter stopped, she suddenly fell silent. When I glanced sideways, I saw that her expression was completely rigid. Well, it's not like I expected it to have been easy for her. Tell me, Miss Shah. Don't hide anything. Don't try to spare me, B. Björn. You have to listen to this calmly, okay? I mean, none of this is totally certain yet, but does she know that phrases like that only make a person more nervous? I know. Come on, speak up. It was only after I insisted that she finally started, when they said you'd been taken by a dragon, everyone freaked out. Erwan kept saying she needed to run out and look for you, but the monsters kept appearing. Opinions were divided. The group that wanted to find me versus the group that said it was impossible, and the person who brought order was Amelia. She said that finding you wasn't a priority, that survival came first. Of course, some people didn't like that, but, she asked Erwin if she thought you'd be happy if someone died trying to find you. I think Erwin gave in more out of pressure than logic, but, anyway, Amelia's logic was very simple. She said that if it were me, I'd be fine even if I got bitten by a dragon, so let's just wait until it comes back on its own. Something like that? I wasn't upset at all by that judgment. No, actually, I was grateful. She kept saying she didn't want a vice leader position and things like that, but in the end, she volunteered to take command in a crisis situation, and then what? We kept resisting, Naya. Whenever we found survivors, we added them to the group without hesitation, so our strength grew. The situation wasn't bad. Oh, and the guild master disappeared out of nowhere in the middle of all that. He's fine. There's no need to worry, I wasn't even worried, Naya, and even, wow, that's a way to embarrass a barbarian. Anyway, the story about the guild master wasn't a particularly important detail for Miss Shah or me, and then what? Yes, then, Miss Shah took a deep breath before continuing. We found a demon with a horrible appearance, Naya. The Anavada clan had encountered a demon-like monster. The moment was in the middle of the third wave. The location was the demon worship room of the Bloody Citadel. What was he like? Oh well. After hearing an extremely detailed description of Miss Shah, I pursed my lips. Giltigus. The third period of stability. The first level demon-type monster I encountered in the Bloody Citadel. Badum. Remembering that, my heart somehow started beating faster and a buzzing filled my ears. Well, that was natural. Giltigus, the first level demon-type monster that was sitting in the boss room, chewing on the monsters' bodies. I clearly remember the scene when I saw the thing. Rhyme. Scattered around the monster were equipment and bones, likely belonging to explorers. The number in the chapter is 25 million, but that doesn't make much sense, does it? I think it was supposed to be 25,000. Chapter 860. Tragic news, 3/8. Badum. My heart started beating fast, pushing blood to my head. But the faster I went, the harder I had to try to stay rational. Björn. Nothing had been confirmed yet. There was no proof whatsoever that the equipment and bones I had seen at that time belonged to my comrades. Therefore, it's okay. Continue. What happened next? So, you can talk. You don't need to worry about me. Upon insisting once more, Miss Shah realized she had no choice and resumed the story she had interrupted. It was such a terrifying monster that Kaislin and Sven Para fainted from a single blow. Raven said we needed to escape immediately, and even that woman, Amelia, agreed. So, just like that time with you, I was the first to cross the dimensional wall. No matter how much I waited after that, no one else showed up. So, I went back the same way, but, strangely, I ended up in a completely different place. Phew, at least that was a relief. Despite my concerns, the worst-case scenario was avoided. It seemed that Miss Shah hadn't directly witnessed anyone die or be seriously injured. Now I understand why she said that nothing was certain yet. These weren't just words of comfort, it was simply the truth. All possibilities were still open. After all, as long as nothing was set in stone, it was even possible to change the past, right? After that, I thought it would be better to keep running instead of standing still, so I ran without stopping for a moment, zigzagging between the groups of monsters. Miss Shah's story that followed was a desperate tale of survival. She wandered through the labyrinth searching for me and our companions, found a group of survivors to take refuge with, but that group was wiped out shortly afterward, and then the same cycle repeated itself. Although the last group she joined lasted quite a while, unfortunately, as soon as that wave began, a first-level monster appeared, causing everyone to scatter and run in panic. So I thought my life was really over and I started running like before, desperate, and then I saw you. But when you didn't see me and went through the dimensional wall, you have no idea how scared I was, Naya. Okay, so that's what happened. Although she spoke somewhat cheerfully, having gone through something similar, I could understand how difficult and painful it must have been. It was already difficult to avoid death even as a barbaric shield, so I can imagine how much worse it must have been for her. You've been through a lot. I really thought I was going to die. Do you understand? Do you understand? You irresponsible barbarian. I understand, so calm down. From now on, no matter what happens, I will protect you. Do you understand? The response took a while to come. Okay. With that, the time spent listening to the full story of past events came to an end, and after that, we continued facing monsters while having more practical conversations, and now, what are we going to do, Naya? We'll keep moving, until we find a decent group, oh, aren't you going to look for the others? I am not saying this with any other meaning, it's just that, knowing you, I thought it would be appropriate, you don't need to explain, I didn't misunderstand, anyway, this is distracting me, so stop talking to me for now. I interrupted the conversation on purpose. I didn't need to explain to her why I wanted to find a group. If I were alone, it would be fine. But with her on my shoulder, the story changes. Even now, I was covering Misha with my shield as if it were an umbrella, leaving the rest of my body completely exposed. Of course, that part doesn't matter much to me. The real problem was, I can survive anything except the instant death floors on the 10th floor, but she can't. With the increased risk, it was natural that my subsequent plans would also change. Of course, if I couldn't find a suitable group, I would have to maintain this situation, whether I liked it or not. And how much time passed like that? Oh hey, do you think everyone is okay? Miss Shah, who was sitting silently behind my shield, asked in a low voice, and I answered without hesitation. They'll be fine. Are they really going? I hope so. Stop thinking nonsense. You're here, alive, aren't you? Do you think it would be different with them? Oh, yes, that's right. They are all amazing people. Yes, they will definitely be alright. The conversation ended with Miss Shah's words, which seemed less like a genuine belief and more a desire to believe in it. It wasn't that I didn't want to continue the conversation, it ended for a purely physical reason. Fwoosh. Upon crossing yet another dimensional wall, a new space appeared, and for the first time, the scenario was completely different. Quang. Violent explosions, the clash of swords and shields, the screams of monsters and the shrill sounds of slaughter. Don't back down. Hold the line no matter what. Priest. Here. Quick. He's dying. Level 3 monster on the left. We need help. A group of survivors. The great forest of the Dark Continent, filled with giant trees that created a somber atmosphere. The survivors gathered in its center, forming a strong defense and resisting the monsters that surrounded them. Hold this side while I move forward. Quick. Now. Puak. The front line fought in a coordinated manner, reacting instinctively to each unexpected variable. Support from the rear arrived at exactly the right moment. And, the left flank can retreat a little, but hold on. The rest of you, concentrate on taking down Victorian mages. What are you doing? Hurry up and blow this up. Clear orders were given in real time. Seeing the survivors moving like interlocking gears, I initially thought they were from the same clan, but, looking closer, I quickly realized that wasn't the case. A variety of different emblems. That was the only thing that proved they were a hastily formed group meant for survival. However, they must have naturally developed coordination after weathering several waves together, just like I had done, before encountering the Lord of Tears. Hey, over there. At that moment, a warrior fighting on the front lines pointed in my direction. They must have just spotted me nearby. Well, even in my gigantification form, the area was full of large monsters. Perhaps that's exactly why it took them so long to spot me. Like a kind of protective coloration, a camouflage effect, you could say. An ogre? But he's wearing armor. Is it a mutant? Even so, calling me an ogre is a bit of an exaggeration. Well, from their perspective, I guess it makes sense. The chances of encountering a real ogre during a dimensional collapse were greater than the chances of an ogre-sized person showing up. Of course, the explanation wasn't particularly difficult. Behala. The moment I let out the official barbarian certification cry, my identity was confirmed. Bjorn. Yandel? With a draconic fear paralyzing the surrounding monsters, the entire battle fell into a brief silence. It's Bjorn Yandel. That cry, which resonated in the silence that contrasted sharply with the chaotic battle of just seconds before, echoed as loudly as my own battle cry, and thanks to that, clear feedback came from the main force. It's the giant. The giant. They didn't seem to care why I was there. The giant. It's Bjorn Yandel. We're saved. Uwa. Their enthusiastic applause explained everything. With a single behella, the entire process, from document review to the interview and final notification, was bypassed. No, beyond simply passing the hiring process. If I insist a little, maybe they'll elect me president of this group. Taking advantage of this opening, I ran towards the group and shouted, "Everyone follow me." The response was immediate. What? Viscount Yandel. Viscount Yandel. Let's kill them all. The vanguard responded with thunderous applause, as if they had found their idol. The emotion that filled their voices spread like an epidemic, soon reinvigorating the entire main force. And then, what? When I turned my head upon hearing another euphoric shout, I saw a man yelling with even more fervor than all the others, "Follow Viscount Yandel, we'll all come back alive." It was the same guy who had been giving orders before, will come back alive. Looking closer, it was the man who had previously given orders with diligence. I wondered if he would fight for control of the command. But, seeing him receive me with open arms, I could imagine how much he had suffered during his last breakdown. However, Misha, who was observing the scene, seemed unable to believe what he was seeing. Is this really working? She was completely stunned. And, Bjorn, thank you, semicolon, oh my god. The survivors were ecstatic, almost like religious fanatics. I, a little embarrassed, shrugged discreetly, HRM. Yes, that's exactly why I like farming reputation. After taking command of a group of about 40 people, what I brought was innovation. No, from the survivors' perspective, it was closer to a miracle, BALAAH. An area of effect attack activated every time I let out a war cry. With more than half the monsters on the battlefield attacking me, not only did the fatigue of my main force decrease drastically, but the combat difficulty reached its lowest possible level. New, Shield Barbarian. This newly released class can also cause damage, which is surprising. You use the Aegis Dragon Breastplate. Each time the armor shone, Aegis appeared and turned the battlefield into ruins. Quang. The critical point where monsters piled up beyond the group's capacity had long since passed, and now the number of enemies only decreased until, finally, we entered a completely stabilized state, incredible, this is too easy. Now, instead of dealing with monsters that constantly piled up, we only had to deal with the monsters as they appeared. It wasn't particularly strange that the survivors who had witnessed this miraculous innovation with their own eyes now looked at me with awe. How can someone be so strong? It's not just anyone. It's Bjorn Yandel, of course. He's strong because he's Bjorn Yandel, damn it, why was I born a Terran and not a barbarian? They weren't being entirely serious, they were just showing enthusiasm. It was probably their way of expressing their gratitude to me, Baal, Oh, is that right? I was a little doubtful when I saw them suddenly chanting the name of the ancestral god of the barbarians, but it's probably not a bad thing. Your reputation has increased by +1. Your reputation has increased by +1. Your reputation has increased. Somehow, it felt like I could hear the sound of my reputation rising. Well, actually, when they returned to the city, my status would increase at least a little. There probably wasn't a single explorer out there who could match my current performance after consuming that walking essence. Jijijik. In any case, as we progressed to the Pilgrim's Path, one of the lowest levels, the difficulty reached an extreme level of ease. I could even chat with a group while they calmly dealt with the monsters. Greetings, Lord Viscount. After gaining some breathing room, I headed towards the main force to talk, when a man came running out. It was the man who had been giving orders before I took command. I'm Hans Kjelvinen, Vice Captain of the Blue Cherry Blossom Clan. Thank you so much for saving us. There is this debt, I swear that. Seeing him approach to shake my hand while bowing deeply, I took a step back. Wait a minute, what's your name? I couldn't tell if it was bad pronunciation, or something else, but I sincerely hope it's the first option. What did you say? That's enough, stop coming closer and tell me your name. The risk was too great to do something like shake hands in that uncertain situation. I knew it was rude, but I still confirmed his name again, and then, Hans Kjelvinen, as I said a moment ago. He tilted his head, confused, but answered my question obediently, and this time I heard him clearly. But it was too early to relax. They always waited cruelly for the moment you let your guard down. Is that the correct pronunciation? No, just spell it out for me. No, don't even say it. Just write it on this paper and show me. I was about to say that when jijijijijik, space became distorted, a fissure larger than that of a simple dimensional transfer. Now that I realize it, every time this happened, it was when a wave ended and a period of stability arrived. Jijijijijik. If that were the case, Hans was truly Hans, and there was a high probability that he was end. No, I don't know yet. If it were Hans, I wouldn't need to be paranoid about the 9th stability period. If circumstances allowed, I could even get some real rest. I hadn't been able to rest properly during the last stability period because of the Lord of Tears. Honestly, I felt like I could fall asleep the moment my back hit the floor. However, if that guy's real name, whose pronunciation was a bit drawling, wasn't Hans, but that, what could be there? What kind of disaster could happen? I didn't know. Not yet. I needed more proof. The Lord of Tears is already dead. I've already met Piccoli too, so it can't be that again, right? A state of hyperfocus, the world slowing down. Jijik. My brain raced, recalling past memories, comparing experiences, and calculating the worst possible scenarios. And finally, I arrived at the answer. I see rock. So, that's it. I see rock. More precisely, the field within it known as the Eye of the Glacier, called the Tomb of the Tanks, where natural regeneration becomes a curse. Jijijik. If we were in the midst of the collapse, even if that place appeared, it wouldn't be a problem, as long as I could escape quickly by crossing the dimensional wall. But that's impossible during the period of stability. So, to simplify, badum, if I fell there in my current state, I would turn into a mummy and die in a few minutes. So, what should I do? Badum, should I eliminate this man right now? Could he be the one? Is that really the right answer? Badum, my heart was pounding, as if ignoring time itself, as if in sync with its beat. The fleeting instant of a second between beats froze and shattered into tens of thousands of fragments. During that time, I struggled and struggled again. What is the right answer? What should I do? Without being able to arrive at a clear answer, badum, my heart began to beat strongly again, and finally, the shattered fragments of frozen time merged together. In the end, all the worries were pointless. Flash. When my vision, which had darkened, returned and I opened my eyes, I, who had surveyed the surrounding area faster than anyone else, realized, Hines. Yes, it was the real Hines. Exhausted inside, I lowered my shield and hammer, powerless. Error corrected. My hammer to kill enemies, my armor to protect me, they were no longer needed. The gloomy sky, the imposing city walls, and, swah, the diffused city light illuminated the survivors who had successfully returned, and a roar from someone overcome by excessive emotion, the dimensional collapse had ended. The maze has been closed. You have been transferred to Raftonia. Remember, Hanson Lee played a 2D game where each square on the screen where the character walked could, or could not, contain a deadly trap, a tile. Chapter 861, Tragic News, April 8th, 9 waves in total. At the end of this long journey, the collapse finally came to an end. Swah, the natural light seemed even brighter in contrast to the darkness of the labyrinth. With that warm touch, my strength drained away without me even realizing it. Part of me just wanted to lie on the ground and enjoy the moment, but it would be better to postpone that for a little while longer. You know that saying, right? Shared joy is double joy. For that to happen, there was still something else I needed to do. Turb. I walked slowly through the garden of the Marquis's mansion, where the temporary portal to the labyrinth had been opened. Here, someone help me. We have an injured person. The scene was so disastrous that no simple words could describe it. All the survivors had injuries, major or minor, and the priests who were awaiting our return, surprised by their condition, rushed to treat them. Fortunately, there was no shortage of priests. No, is it really accurate to call that luck? There is only one reason why there was no shortage of manpower, despite the number of injured being higher than in any previous return. It was because many people died. It seems like 200, 300, maybe 400. Of course, I'm not talking about the number of people who died. The number of people who went in, which was 4,300, was reduced to about 300 to 400. Even by the most conservative estimate, that meant that 90% had died. Even so, that survival rate is considered high because the explorers who went on that expedition to the labyrinth were all high-ranking explorers with considerable skills. If it had been under normal circumstances, 99.9%, yes, something close to that would certainly have happened. What the heck happened in there? A dimensional collapse. That damned calamity exploded in there. That's impossible. Are you sure? Corton, notify your superiors immediately. The military officers, belatedly realizing the situation unfolding inside the labyrinth, began running around frantically. Regardless, I kept walking. Where are they? We all entered together through the gate in the Marquis's garden, so if they managed to get out safely, I should be able to find them here easily. Yes, it should have been that way. Badum, but they weren't. B. Bjorn, Miss Shaw was here. Badum, but they weren't. Ahoha, I knew you'd come back alive. The guildmaster was here. Lord Viscount, you are safe. May the moonlight bless us. Bjorn, I knew it. I always believed it. Armin, the priestess, and Aidner were here. Suk, the company commander, who looked away when our eyes met, and the Aluma clan, who left saying they were sorry, but that they needed to protect their comrades. I'm sorry, but we had no choice. Hey, don't hit me. Even the special wizard was here. So how could this be happening? They are not here. Only members of our Inabita clan. They were nowhere to be found in the Marquis's garden. I walked, and walked, and walked some more. Miss Shaw, following me silently, said nothing, as did Ainer. This happened after we had walked around the garden more than 3 times. Badum. Suddenly, I heard the voices around me in my ears, where before there had only been the thunderous sound of my own heartbeat. Look, he's completely catatonic. No wonder, only 3 survived. I never thought the Inabita clan would be annihilated. Well, in that hellhole, there was nothing that even the Viscount couldn't do. They were whispered conversations from the survivors, looking directly at me. Took, When I stopped walking, those who had been murmuring, realizing that I might have heard them, shrank back and shut their mouths as if they had been caught red-handed. I didn't bother to approach them. I didn't utter any words of warning to them. I didn't even look at them or show any displeasure, Bjorn. I kept walking, pretending I hadn't heard anything. Then, someone approached me. A knight cautiously asked if I could accompany him to a meeting about the situation inside the labyrinth, and I didn't answer. Instead, I gently nudged the knight's shoulder to push him away and continued walking. I didn't intend to wander aimlessly around the Marquis's garden either, authorization to disperse hasn't been given yet. This operation was a top-secret military mission. Then, the rider at the entrance, startled, tried to block me. Gelton, get out. A superior officer appeared and moved the knight aside, but sir, the order I received was, who is your immediate supervisor, understood. There was no further conversation after that. I walked to the city along the path they had cleared, and during that time the senior officer simply greeted me silently, as if he were expressing condolences for what I had lost. I wasn't particularly grateful, nor was it comforting. Even after entering the city, I continued walking. I passed through the royal capital, Karnan, which seemed too peaceful, and used a military magic circle to reach Commelby. Commelby was similar to Karnan. The streets were crowded and quiet. Of course, the effects of the recent war were still evident in the streets. A family who had lost their home sat in the street. A woman begged while holding a newborn baby in her arms. A drunk man with one of his trouser legs tied up, leaning against a wall and drinking in broad daylight. The streets weren't as lively as usual in Commelby, but, at least to my eyes, it seemed peaceful. And, for some reason, no one approached me today like they used to. After driving through the streets of Commelby, we arrived home, a 3-story building in excellent condition, just 10 minutes from the Almanes shopping center. The Anabata clan's home, which we bought for a low price with the help of the Melbeth Trading Company. Actually, it had been quite a while since I'd been here. After the war ended, I spent most of my time in the sacred land taking care of tribal affairs. The weather in Commelby wasn't very good either, so I didn't want to come. As we entered, the street noise faded, making the silence even more pronounced. Although it was called the clan's house, the second and third floors were used as living quarters. The first floor was decorated like a living room, where we usually held meetings with the members whenever something happened. No, even when nothing special was going on, board members would show up there, so the first floor was usually busy. In the morning, Aryan prepared the meals in the kitchen, and Sven Parav, who had been staying at a nearby inn, would often come over to eat, saying that the food at the inn wasn't good. Amelia and Erwan's rooms were on the second floor. Mine and Aryan's were on the third floor. Einer's residence was in the Holy Land, but for some reason she used to stay up late at night and ended up sleeping on the living room sofa. Bjorn? Miss Shaw's voice snapped me out of my trance. I was standing there, staring at the empty room. First, let's take a shower. Yes, it was the best thing to do. We were all in chaos. It's okay. Miss Shaw nodded in agreement. Then I went upstairs to the third floor, quickly organized our equipment and clothes while filing the bathtub, then squeezed myself into it and submerged myself. Scrub. I used a sponge to scrub away the dried blood and bits of meat stuck to my body, then lathered up several times to finish. When I went downstairs after washing up, Miss Shaw and Einer were already there, looking like they'd finished washing up long before. Did I take that long? Hey, Bjorn. First, let's eat. Okay. I'll prepare something quick with what I have in the subspace. Miss Shaw ran to the kitchen and prepared a meal with the ingredients she had brought in her subspace, and we all sat down at the table and ate in silence. Bjorn. When the short meal was over, this time it wasn't Miss Shaw, but Einer who spoke to me, and I quickly stood up from my chair. First, let's go to sleep. Yes, that's the best. You must be tired too. After that, I went through the second floor and into my room on the third floor, locking the door behind me. The smell of rotting blood emanated from my armor and the underwear I had left soiled, but I did nothing about it. I thought it might help me sleep better. It made me feel like I was still in the labyrinth. Yes, I need to sleep, even if it's just for the sake of tomorrow. Plop. I fell onto the bed as if I had fainted, and drifted into a deep, slow sleep, while time, as always, flew by. The sun rose and set, the sky darkened and then shone again. The world beyond the curtains repeated itself tirelessly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. At a certain point, I stopped counting how many days had passed and how many more days had flown by since then. During that time, many people came looking for me. I left the food by the door. If you get hungry, remember to eat, okay? Alright? Miss Shaw prepared each meal carefully and left it by the door. They say there were 401 who survived, but you know what's curious? Almost 100 of them survived because of you. Sometimes she would sit outside the door and talk about what was happening outside for a long time. Even when I didn't answer, she would continue, tirelessly, you can really hear it in there, right? People outside calling you nonstop. The city is in an uproar again. That a new entry had been added to the Stone of Honor. That Duke Lunas, the newly appointed Prime Minister, was looking for me. That Armin had been there this morning, Yandel, I can't even begin to imagine how you must be feeling. But, this isn't you, HMPH, it was Mr. Bear this time. Stand up, be yourself. Well, I don't even know what it means to be myself. Why do people have such a high opinion of me, I'll be back later. Oh, and, thank you, for helping me back then. If it weren't for you, reality would have been hell for me, even after I returned. After Mr. Bear, it was Einer's turn, Bjorn, come out of there. The warriors of the sacred land are all worried and waiting for you. If we go out together and eat something delicious, you'll feel better. Einer's voice was excessively cheerful. Hearing it, I realized once again how pathetic my state was at that moment. It's me, Ednus. As you probably already know, your name has been engraved again on the Stone of Honor. But unfortunately, this time your other companions weren't mentioned, but what nonsense are you talking about, Naya? So my situation became a little embarrassing. If you can, when you appear in public, mention that I am too. If that's what you came to say, then leave right now. Leave right now. Now, the guildmaster came and was kicked out by Miss Shah. The dwarf came and, without saying a word, just silently drank alcohol by the door before leaving. Several events occurred, but in the end, I did nothing and just let time pass aimlessly. For now, I just wanted to stay like this, without thinking about anything. Like when I used to lock myself in my room and play video games. 10 days, 2 weeks, a month. Time in the dark room passed too quickly, but there was a definite end to it. Handsomely and Bjorn are fundamentally different. Bjorn's world wasn't forgiving enough to wait until he could overcome things on his own. Crash. The tightly closed door was shattered into pieces, and the light of the world surged in. Oh, that's enough. I can't take it anymore. How long are you going to sleep, Bjorn? Get up now. If you keep acting so pathetically, I'll fire you as boss. You hear me? Understand? Einar walked over to my bed, illuminated by the sun behind him. Keep it. I turned my head as if to say I wouldn't even bother trying, and Einar immediately sprang into action. Puruk. A spear pierced my soft abdomen. Only after realizing what had happened to me did an intense and excruciating pain belatedly arise. Arg. What do you think you're doing? What does it look like? Have you already forgotten the tradition of our tribe? The position of chief is earned through combat. That's absurd. Get up, Bjorn, or I'll keep poking you. And indeed, as if to prove he wasn't bluffing, Einar continued poking my skin with the tip of his spear, and I ended up having no choice but to stand up. Oh, you got up? You should have done that from the beginning. Really? Those barbarians? There's no way to make them understand common sense. Leave while I'm still asking politely. Einar, what will happen if you don't ask nicely? You have less eye contact than the young warriors who have just finished their coming-of-age ceremony. Look, you can't even make proper eye contact. Who would think of you as a great warrior now? In fact, Einar closed the distance between us with bold steps, as if he had no fear of me whatsoever. Well, go ahead, try it. You don't have to say it nicely. Whether you say mean things, or whine like a child, or say nonsense I can't understand, or simply beat each other up until we're covered in blood, whatever it is, I don't care, Bjorn. So, Einar cupped my head with both hands and then headbutted me in the forehead like a rhinoceros. Quagic. The shock coursed through my skull and shook my brain, but I didn't have the energy to care about it. Please. We were so close that our noses could touch, it was no longer possible to avoid her gaze and look away. Finally, I could see Einar's face. Now, say something, anything. So that's how she'd been looking at me all this time, for almost a month. Ironically, what I did most while locked in my room with the sole intention of not thinking about anything was think some more. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't believe it. I even started to think I might still be in the labyrinth. Finally, there is the waterfall of dreams. What if, after the 9th wave ended and the period of stability arrived, I fell into the waterfall of dreams? And is that why I'm having this absurd dream? That possibility actually seemed more realistic. But, I can't go on like this forever. So I lifted my spoon and put the hot soup in my mouth. At the first floor dining table, across from me, Miss Shah and Einar watched me nervously. I can understand Miss Shah, but Einar is a bit ridiculous. She suddenly broke down my door, stuck a spear in my stomach and demanded we talk, but now she's like this. So, is it tasty? As soon as I finished my meal and put my spoon down, Miss Shah spoke to me. Yes, thank you, it was good. I answered honestly, and then an awkward silence fell. Damn, what an awkward atmosphere. Even I, as gruff as I am, found it difficult to start a conversation in a situation like this. but there were things I needed to say. Sorry for worrying you. Yes, first, an apology. It's true that I've been a pathetic mess lately. Oh, and no, you don't need to apologize. Not at all. That's right, Bjorn. You know how much you've already done for us. I even regretted starting with this. I didn't expect them to react as if I'd thrown a bucket of boiling water on them. Finally, I put the apology aside and got straight to the point. So, during all this time, I've been thinking about a lot of things. I went straight to the point. One of the many thoughts I had reflected on repeatedly while locked in my room. The only possibility that is somewhat realistic. Perhaps they are all still alive. There is, I know, it sounds absurd, so I'll explain. Just be quiet and listen. Seeing their confused looks, I slowly explained the possibility I had deduced. Until, oh, so, in short, there's a possibility that all the other members fell into the first basement during the dimensional collapse. Is that what you're saying? Yes, you understood perfectly. You know that too, don't you? That countless explorers have entered the first underground floor before. Well, is that true? I've thought about this several times, but it simply doesn't make sense that none of the members managed to return to the city. Miss Shaw managed to hold out on her own until she found me, didn't she? Logically, at least some of the Anabata members should have managed to return alive, but the number of survivors is 0. Furthermore, according to Miss Shaw, who asked everyone, apparently no one saw them in the labyrinth after the third wave, if you analyze it objectively, this hypothesis is even more plausible than the idea that everyone died. Do you agree? Could it be? Miss Shaw glanced sideways at Aner, as if asking for help, and, why are you looking at me? Miss Shakalstein, don't throw that at me. Even for a barbarian, she wasn't so stupid as not to understand the meaning behind that reaction. You don't believe me, it's not that we don't believe it. Stop, Miss Shaw. We have to say things as they are. Aner interrupted Miss Shaw, who was gesturing with her hands in a sign of denial. We can't postpone the funeral forever, Bjorn. Accept it. They're dead. Don't insult them anymore. Let them go. The way Aner spoke, with cold, restrained eyes, was somehow unfamiliar, but it suited her very well. If you observe closely, she always demonstrated a more rational and mature side than I did in matters like this. But that was that, and that was that. No, I'm not going to hold any funeral. Not until I've searched every corner of the first basement with my own eyes. That's my decision. Any objections? I spoke clearly and firmly. Aner stared at me for a long time, and then smiled. I have absolutely nothing to complain about. Her reaction was far more compliant than I had expected. No, it had already gone beyond what one could call simple compliance. If that's what you've decided, then I'll follow you. It doesn't matter who in the world criticizes you. Bjorn, son of Yendel, you are a great warrior. Faced with that look of blind faith, I couldn't help but smile back either. I was caught, and, for the first time in a long time, it wasn't a bad feeling. A shimmering silvery sea, all sorts of miscellaneous items floated on its silvery waves. I don't believe that. A red-haired woman stood on a rock, murmuring as she watched the waves crashing. I can't believe I'm back in this damn place again. His monologue clearly revealed his irritation. At that, the dozen men and women around him let out deep sighs. They probably think we are already dead out there, right? Which means we have no choice but to return on our own. How long will it take for us to get back this time? Sometimes, knowing too much can make a situation seem even more desperate. Chapter 862. Tragic news, May 8th. From the moment I composed myself and left my room, my days became endlessly busy. While the world changed every minute due to the great event called dimensional collapse, I remained locked in my room for almost a month. However, I wouldn't say it was a useless waste of time. Sometimes things like this are necessary to move forward even further. It gives you plenty of time to think, and think some more. Bail. The first thing I did after preparing to move on again was to announce that I had survived. He's the tribe's chief. Woohoo. The great warrior has returned. First, I went to the sacred land and invoked the name of the ancestral god, instantly dispelling the anxiety that had been building among the warriors due to the isolation of the chief. You're late. Oh, I'm really sorry. I sincerely apologized to Shavin Amor, the Minister of Economy for the barbarian tribe. After all, even after I returned to the city, she was left to handle all the work alone for over a month. Oh, wait, wasn't it always like that? But now that you're back, I don't know, I feel kind of strange. There is, at least, while everyone was apathetic, nobody caused any major trouble. As the boss, there wasn't much I could say. I just let it go. Well, you arrived later than I expected. I also had a few drinks with the dwarf and Mr. Bear to express my gratitude and apologies. But what's with those two? Did they make a bet about when I'd leave? Come on, hand it over already. I won the bet. Apparently, they really had bet on how long it would take me to leave the room. Well, at least that made it clear that, in their minds, there was no possibility that I would never leave, once again, I'm very sorry for what happened. Because of his consideration and empathy, the drinking atmosphere quickly turned dark, but that wasn't what I wanted, you don't need to make that face. I'm fine now, what a relief. But if you need a drink, you can call us anytime. All of our members may still be alive, what? Of course. When I explained the whole basis for that thought, his eyes became even more understanding, which was a bit much. It was as if he were looking fondly at a friend who had lost his mind. It doesn't matter, you'll see. You'll see if I'm right or wrong. Oh, or should we make a bet? A bet? Okay, let's do it. So you really didn't believe me? That's not entirely true. You speak with such confidence about it that my own certainty is beginning to waver. So why did you agree to make the bet? Well, you're the opponent, aren't you? When it comes to a match, I simply can't imagine you losing. So, the bet is on? Yes, it's done. Oh, by the way, we didn't explicitly decide what the loser would have to give up. The dwarf mumbled a few jokes about it, but I just laughed. Not because I thought I'd lose. I'm simply not foolish enough to take it too seriously. Well, then, let's get together like this again someday. I'm going now. My wife is waiting. The day after meeting with them, my schedule was also packed, Bjorn, you'll have to make time today. We need to visit Kopsen, Kopsen? Carlson Endrich's younger brother. I also passed by the Carlson's house, who helped Einar during her breakdown. From what I understand, Einar had already visited them several times while I was locked in my room. Everyone wants to see you. Since I owed Carlson a favor, I cleared my schedule without complaint and went with Einar. The Endrich family was a single-parent family with many mouths to feed. With the eldest son, Carlson, at the head, he had no fewer than 5 younger siblings below him. Oh, Kopsen was the second son. Wow, Yandel. It really is Bjorn Yandel, children. How can you be so rude to the Viscount? Oh, I'm sorry, Viscount. The youngest is still very young. Okay, don't worry about it. I'll be speaking informally too. After all, what are you saying? How could we treat you this way, Viscount? What's so different between us? Oh, that you're human and not barbarians? Don't tell me you're racist, and no, of course not. So it's settled. Don't worry about it from now on. Mrs. Endrich served us an excellent home-cooked meal. Afterwards, I took Kopsen to assess his strength and assist him with his training. Kopsen, what's your level again? 7th. That's why I couldn't accompany my brother into the labyrinth. Don't be discouraged, Kopsen. I already told you, you're going to get much stronger. I myself will make you strong. Ahoha? Yes, I trust Miss Fenelon. Could it be because he felt he had to replace Carlson, who had been the head of the family? Despite his frail appearance, Kopsen somehow managed to stick to the intense training Einar had prepared. Furthermore, although he seemed to feel immense pressure due to the attention Einar was paying him, he never refused his consideration. And I continued to observe all of this. I realized, once again, the extent of the debt we owed to Carlson Endrich. Thank you for coming. My brothers were so happy. It had been a long time since I'd seen them smile like that. You don't need to thank us for anything. Einar and I will come back again soon. And so, the visit to the Carlson family home came to an end. The small amount of money I had hidden under the table, in case they refused or felt uncomfortable, well, I'm sure they'll find it soon. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. The sun rose and set outside, behind the curtains. During that time, I continued to meet people and, at the same time, learned a lot about the changes that occurred while I was in my room. And if I had to choose the most important point among them, the labyrinth has not reopened. It wasn't opened in particular, like in the previous round. Furthermore, nothing had been decided about the next opening of the labyrinth. No, actually, the fact that there hadn't been any mention of it, not even to me, means it will probably remain closed this time as well. But it won't be long. I believe the labyrinth would reopen soon. The city was running out of mana stones, so they would certainly need a solution quickly. And when it happened, it wouldn't be private. After all, 90% of high-level adventurers didn't make it back from that incident, did they? I should hurry up a little. With that in mind, I had a meeting with Emil Armin. Actually, I had met him before to report on my survival, but this was a real personal visit. Us? You want us to join the Anabada clan? Yes, it seems sudden, I know, but it's not a bad offer. Both you and I lost a lot of strength because of the collapse. You're not going to abandon your profession as an adventurer, are you? That's actually not true. Armin seemed stunned, as if that idea had never crossed his mind. This guy really needs more confidence. Honestly, Armin is a top-tier talent in my eyes. His skills are undeniable, and his reliability was proven during the collapse. But that's not all, right? I don't intend to deceive you, so I'll be direct. My ultimate goal is the first basement level. Armin even has experience exploring the first basement. Of course, when he heard that, Armin wondered why I wanted to go back there, but when I honestly explained my reason for wanting to go to the basement, his reaction was surprisingly positive. Indeed, it is possible, and I understand why you judged it that way, Viscount. I think that was the first time someone didn't look at me with pity after hearing that theory. Anyway, you don't need to answer now. Think about it calmly. The business conversation ended there, and afterwards we just talked about everyday things. I intended to decide how to organize the rest of the members after seeing if he agreed or not. 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 8 days. Time continued to pass quickly after that. During that period, I met with people every day, dealing with matters I had postponed during my time away. Oh, and there were also those who came to see me first. Yandel, I heard about what happened. I heard you overcame everything. Ha ha ha. I always believed in you. The guild master, Ilya Agnus, alias, you seem very busy. I sent some letters, but you didn't answer any of them. Haha. Well, of course, because of that incident, that old man is really upset with Miss Shah. If I get caught with him now, I could get in trouble. Get straight to the point. There will soon be a hearing regarding my dismissal. The other regional managers are already campaigning and competing with each other as if my dismissal has already been decided. So what? Well, could you speak publicly on my behalf? Don't the adventurers listen to everything you say? If you would just say a few words, like how much I helped you get your name inscribed on the Stone of Honor this time, what do I get out of it? The dragon's heart. I will give you what I promised. I thought for a moment and then calmly agreed. Well, Miss Shah would probably be furious if she knew about this. Still, it's right to keep public and private matters separate. After all, earning a dragon's heart just by saying a few words, there was no reason not to do it. Besides, to reach the next level of the Mark of Immortality, the shaman's recovery is crucial. Haha, then I'll count on you. And so, more time passed. 10 days, 15 days, a month. My schedule was now more or less set, and I spent most of my time in the Holy Land, testing my new skills. Bjorn, where are you going so early in the morning? To the capital. I might be late, so don't wait for me and eat your dinner without me. I understand, but try to come back as soon as possible. Miss Shah said she's going to grill meat today. She even said she's not going to put carrots in it. I guess I should head back early then. For the first time in a long time, I left the Holy Land and headed for the royal capital, Karnan, leader of the Anabata clan, chief of the barbarian tribe. Today, instead of those two titles, I had to deal with the accumulated work as Viscount Yandel. Then, it is an honor to see you, Lord Viscount. Please, come in. I took the military magic circle directly to Karnan and entered the royal palace. No, more precisely, I entered the Palace of Wisdom. It's been a long time since I've been here. Today, the regular meeting of the Royal Council was to be held here. Last time, I couldn't attend because I was still locked in my room, but considering I had to scramble to gather information on my own as a result, I absolutely needed to be there this time. Today's meeting should give me a clearer picture. A truly diverse range of topics comes up in the meetings of the Royal Council, and certainly the main topic of this meeting would be what to do with the labyrinth from now on. The labyrinth is not yet open. Monostone reserves are rapidly dwindling because of this. The number of high-level adventurers is very small. These were the most urgent issues Raftonia needed to resolve immediately, and in truth, the situation had already gone far beyond simply having fire at its feet. Soon, the situation would spiral out of control. One only had to look at the streets. Events such as apocalyptic cults, pseudo-religious groups, and riots were springing up one after another like mushrooms after the rain. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. Shortly after I sat down in my designated place and waited, the new Prime Minister, Duke Lunas, appeared. It has been a difficult and worrying month, but this Prime Minister believes that if we all come together and unite our wills, we can overcome this crisis safely. Nia Raftonia. After a brief greeting and a moment of silence, the meeting began. But what on earth was going on here? The first item on the agenda concerns the complete revocation of Baron Levier's title. Why aren't we talking about a labyrinth? Oh, it's just because it's the first item on the agenda, so they're starting with lighter topics? The second item on the agenda concerns the new heretical forces that are rampant in the city. Specifically, the request from the Church of the Three Gods for authorization to independently eradicate the heretics. For some reason, the second one was similar. Should such significant authority really be granted to a religious group? And what if we don't? Currently, the royal family doesn't have the resources to handle this, so it's better to temporarily transfer the authority and use them as a watchdog group. Useless opinions like these clashed and took up a considerable amount of time. And, third, fourth, fifth, no matter how many agenda items came up, the topic I wanted never appeared. No, not only did they not want it, they were all trivial. Some baronial families embezzled social security funds, so what punishments should be applied? who should be appointed as the next administrative director. They want to increase the military budget, but by how much? And how to deal with the eldest son of an earl who committed a sexual crime against a noblewoman. That's ridiculous. Watching these self-proclaimed aristocrats arguing with their neck veins bulging over such trivial matters, I felt truly disillusioned. Are these bastards just parasites destroying the kingdom? How is it possible that none of them genuinely care about the future of this kingdom? Shouldn't I be the one to hate this kingdom? 7th, 8th, 9th. The meeting, which only allowed for brief breaks long enough to use the restroom, was finally drawing to a close. The sun outside had set long ago. I was starting to get annoyed, thinking this was the biggest waste of time I'd experienced all year. Now, on to the 10th item on the agenda. It's probably just another trivial matter. I, who was resting my chin, almost dozing off, listening with one ear and letting it slip out the other, paid close attention. I would like to discuss the foundation and future of this kingdom, the labyrinth. Yes, it's finally arriving. Did they deliberately save the most important thing for last? I immediately straightened my posture and prepared to listen attentively. Currently, Raftonia is facing a serious and unprecedented crisis. Due to this dimensional collapse, the number of high-level adventurers has decreased by 90%. The Prime Minister. No, I simply can't get used to it. The Duke of Kilunis emphasized the current crisis, even adding expert opinions as supporting evidence. At this rate, even if we fully open the Labyrinth Management Office has determined that the supply of mana stones will not be sufficient to meet the minimum needs to maintain the kingdom. Simply put, at this rate, a national bankruptcy would occur. Therefore, this Prime Minister is proposing an item on the agenda to overcome the current crisis. Yet, after building up so much anticipation, it better not be something trivial. I'm just going to turn the tables and walk out. In the end, the table-turning incident didn't happen. Well, maybe not yet. At least, my actions would depend on the Duke's response. What did you just say? Repeat it. I jumped up from my chair and spoke for the first time in the entire meeting. I was sure I must have misheard. It was that absurd. It's exactly as I said before. This Prime Minister is considering a plan to fully accept all his forces after signing a treaty to completely end the war with an orc. He wants to form an alliance with an orc? Chapter 863, Tragic News, June 8th. Strictly speaking, it wasn't an alliance. From the beginning, Duke Kilunis himself made that clear. Total acceptance? That the residential areas would be different. That they would only explore the labyrinth together. That their identities would be rigorously verified. And that they would prevent any criminal activity within the labyrinth. No matter what measures were added, the truth remained the same. The points mentioned earlier were merely stepping stones to soften the impact. Duke Kilunis's objective was a complete merger and acquisition. Have you gone mad? I murmured this without realizing it, and silence fell for a brief moment before the surrounding environment erupted in murmurs. They started shouting, asking how I dared to speak to the Prime Minister like that, even though he didn't demand formal language. I should at least show respect. Some even insulted my entire race. And, almost whispering, some wretch laughed, saying I must be sensitive because my clan had gone to hell. But none of that mattered. Power now rested with Duke Kilunis, so of course they were trying to curry favor. At another time, I would have taken the opportunity to show them firsthand what a barbarian strike was like. But, bang, now was not the time to waste time with insects. I slammed my fist on the table with just enough force not to break it, and silence fell over the conference room once more. Everyone just displayed surprised expressions at the sudden situation. This time, no one reprimanded or cursed me. The reason was simple and primitive. They thought that if they opened their mouths, they might actually get beaten up. In any case, since the silence returned, I achieved my goal. Repeat that, Duke Kilunis. Are you saying you're going to let those bastards from Nork into the city? Unlike the nobles, who exchanged nervous glances, Duke Kilunis showed no sign of discomfort, as if he had already anticipated exactly that reaction. It's not decided yet. For now, I've only presented a proposal. Then it's no use. Those pests from Nork will never obey what we say. Hearing this, the Duke simply looked at me in silence, and in that look I understood. The negotiations. They're over, aren't they? He responded to my words as if he had been waiting for that exact moment. In fact, they were the ones who made contact first. Knowing that if they missed this chance, only destruction would remain, they accepted enormous concessions. These concessions were exactly those he had mentioned before: segregation of residential neighborhoods, rigorous identity checks, harsher punishments for crimes, and so on. It's not that I don't understand how you feel, but, in the name of national interests, sometimes you have to learn to suppress your personal emotions. Furthermore, as Prime Minister and as a nobleman who desires the good of the nation, I am merely indicating a path. If this truly does not please you, simply exercise your right. In other words, use your precious vote. But, from my point of view, it sounded like pure provocation. Even if I voted against it, nothing would change. The mere fact that such a matter was officially presented at a meeting of the royal family meant that the entire deal behind the scenes was already sealed. So, can I proceed? Without hiding any trace of my discomfort, I sat back down, slamming my chair shut, without even answering. And then, those who agree with the proposal, please turn over your coin. The nobles present exercise a precious right, and with that, the course of Raftonia's politics was defined. Ting, ting, ting. The proposal to establish a complete peace agreement with Nork and accept them fully was approved. There were a few more topics after that, all related to Nork, and some very heated discussions followed, more than I expected. After all, even going in the same direction, that doesn't mean everyone agrees on how to get there. This level of support is excessive. How do you expect us to trust people from Nork? It would be better to invest more in training new adventurers. I agree. If we can recover the number of adventurers, we won't need the help of a bunch of traders, right? I disagree. Did they become rebels because they truly wanted to? Only by minimizing discrimination and offering active support can they be reborn as full citizens of Raftonia. Duke Lunas conducted the royal meeting to its conclusion, discussing details with those present, debating when necessary, and adjusting each point until consensus was reached. How long did it go on like that? Well, I believe everything is settled. Let's end the meeting here. The long and exhausting royal meeting finally ended. I tried to request a private conversation with Duke Lunas afterward, but he refused, citing fatigue. When I left the Palace of Wisdom, it was already late at night. Knock, knock. The carriages leaving the palace disappeared, and the night streets were deserted. I walked slowly, trying to gather my thoughts and breathe some fresh air. What will happen from now on? After the proposal was approved, I spent the rest of the meeting with my arms crossed, eyes closed, feigning indifference. But I kept my ears open and absorbed everything perfectly. And, summarizing only the important points. 1. Significant investment in newcomers. Raftonia decided to dedicate the remainder of its national force to training new adventurers. Tax exemption. Expansion of the Adventurers Guild budget. For those who demonstrate potential, it seems they intend to even release the essences accumulated in the royal family's treasury, and also send official notifications to each race, practically a mandatory recruitment. It will probably reach our barbarian people soon. I ended up getting a spoiler by accident. And that's not all. It hasn't been fully approved yet, but there was a suggestion to reduce the minimum age to enter the labyrinth to 17, which previously required being an adult. It's unlikely to pass. Even the measures mentioned before are still subject to change as new meetings take place. Anyway. 2. Bifron. To lessen the impact the city will feel, Nork's faction will initially be confined to Bifron. They will even activate the Dimensional Plaza, and they say their entry will be through there. That makes sense. If they mixed the residential areas immediately, the reaction would be even more violent. Surprisingly, the nobles didn't seem very concerned. They said that all they had to do was create public opinion favorable to Nork and bombard the population with constant propaganda. In the end, everyone would accept it. I have no way to refute that. The lockdown period in Bifron is still undetermined and may be extended or reduced depending on how the situation evolves. Access areas will also not be released all at once, but gradually, one's own at a time. Anyway, it doesn't matter much to me. Since I couldn't prevent Nork's integration, it doesn't matter much what happens with those details. For me, as an adventurer, this is what matters most. 3. In 3 months, support for newcomers, integration of Nork. 3 months after completing all this, the labyrinth will reopen. In other words, by then I also need to finish the preparations and strengthen my team so I can explore. Greetings, Viscount Yandel. Wandering aimlessly, lost in thought, I stopped automatically when I heard a voice calling me. The Heroes Square, in Karnan, the imperial capital, and also the first dimensional square of Raftonia. More precisely, in its center, the Stone of Honor. I approached slowly and observed. The great barbarian warrior Bjorn Yandel and his companions defeated the Lord of Terror, Dreadfear, and opened up a hidden area. This was the first text in which my name appeared on that immense stone. At the time, it was an event that hadn't happened in 600 years, so it caused an absurd uproar. The square was packed with curious nobles, people taking commemorative photos, and there was even a crowd in front of my house. But there's nobody here. Besides the 2 soldiers guarding the Stone of Honor, no one else was to be seen. Well, it's night, so that makes sense. And 2 months have passed already. Above all, this is the 3rd time already. There's no way the interest will be the same as before. Once, when we defeated Dreadfear, the great barbarian warrior Bjorn Yandel and his companions entered the first underground floor, the archives of records. Another one went stepping onto the first basement level, and then, the great barbarian warrior Bjorn Yandel unleashed the hidden power of a lord, and a new island emerged. Once again, after drinking the essence of tears, I already knew what the text would be, so I didn't feel anything special. To tell the truth, it even seemed surreal. The whole thing about talking, giving support, and everything else must have been the condition. But is that something worthy of being engraved even on the stone of honor? If someone asked, I could only tilt my head. Honestly, I don't think I've done anything so grand. Anyway, since a new island has appeared, when we find our way, we'll explore it at least once. Sure, it's not my main goal. If possible, I'll visit it along the way. My ultimate goal is still the first basement level. For that, I need to assemble the team correctly. Oh, and I still haven't received a concrete answer from Armin. He must be calmly organizing his thoughts. After all, nobody knows when the labyrinth will reopen. For that reason, I haven't pressured or gone recruiting more people. But, now I need to speed up. Today's meeting set the opening date for the labyrinth. And when the time comes, we will enter side by side with a variable called Nork. Reliable companions will be even more essential. Since I thought of it, I'll go there now. Sir, oh, I was just talking to myself. Good job. It is an honor, Viscount. After merely greeting the soldiers who were working late, I used the military magic circle and set off for my new destination. A very familiar place to me. The Magic Tower. The place where, thanks to Raven, I came every day for experiments on my body and, even after that, I needed to return countless times. So familiar that it's impossible to get lost. Stop. At the moment, entry for outsiders is prohibited. As soon as I approached the entrance, the guard, who is mechanically reciting the routine phrase, widened his eyes when he recognized me. It's very late. If you have any official business, please return when it's light. Then he recognized me. His tone changed the moment he saw my face. It would be strange if you didn't recognize me. There was this one time I stormed that place leading all the barbarians and destroyed half the building. I'm probably the most dangerous individual on their watch list. But that's that, and now is now. That's enough. Open the gate. As I said, entry is currently prohibited for outsiders. Wow, what a conversation. He thinks I've only been here twice in my life. I was under the impression that it was permitted to enter at night if you were invited. It used to be. Yes, but the rules have changed recently. I didn't know that. Well, it was an understandable change. With the war, the refugees, the riots, in chaotic times like these, you should start by properly securing your front door. I sincerely apologize. There's nothing I can do. Please come back when it's light. For some reason, the guard who should have been displaying an authoritative attitude was, on the contrary, sincerely pleading, almost as if you were begging, and I couldn't help but reflect on that for a moment. Going back later would be a drag, but if I simply ignored him and forced my way in, I would feel sorry for that guard. It's obvious he'd have problems later, isn't it? If he lost his job in a recession like this, that guard wouldn't be able to fulfill his obligations as head of the family, and he was still educated. So, what would be the best course of action? As a Korean barbarian who understands courtesy and etiquette, I seriously considered this problem and soon arrived at an answer. If the problem is that I can't get in, I just need to get the other person to leave. After making a decision, there is no reason to hesitate. Just as there is no hesitation in the sword of a master swordsman who has reached the realm of union between mind and sword. The moment I made my decision, I shouted, skirt, the being that made me come to this magic tower, Yurvan Havelian, the master of the Ghostbusters, the community of evil spirits, commonly known as GM, if you don't leave, I'll break in. Staying locked in your room all the time is bad for your health. Chapter 864, Tragic News, July 8th. The deafening cry echoed through the sleeping city. Of course, a single shout wouldn't reach the ears of the man holed up high in the tower, locked in some corner of his room. But, if it doesn't work once, then twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, the life of a barbarian has taught me that if you keep hitting, even steel will eventually give way. If I keep yelling, he'll show up eventually. With all this commotion out here, how could it not reach his ears? With that thought, I drew strength once more from the depths of my abdomen. What are you doing here? I turned my head when I heard the voice behind me and saw the GM frowning. I looked at him and asked, what are you doing here? Does this seem like the right way to start a conversation? Yes, that's right. I was so surprised that the words came out awkwardly. Why are you here? I was gone for a moment and I'm coming back now. You? I asked again after a brief pause, and the GM remained silent. He seemed to have something he wanted to say, but held back, as if he would only stress himself out. So why did you come looking for me? Wait a moment, I interrupted, looking at him seriously. How did you know I came looking for you? Answer me, Yurvan Havelian. Have you been following me until now? With you yelling like that, how could I not know? Oh, that's true too. He let out a long sigh as he replied, and I nodded without arguing, as if I understood. A kind of barbarian-style small talk. If you play dumb, the other person ends up lowering their guard a little. Exactly like that. Then why were you yelling like that? I came to meet you, but they said that someone without an invitation can't enter, so I called. Remember how it was when we were kids? We'd show up at our friend's door unannounced and yell until they came out. Back when cell phones didn't exist, everyone did that. So, using the same method in this fantasy world isn't strange at all. If that's the case, all I had to do was ask the guards to notify me. There was that method too. I nodded again, as if I had learned something important, and he shook his head wearily. Let's change places first. That's good. Let's go somewhere a little more secluded, okay? Since there's been quite a commotion here. I followed the Grandmaster to a tavern about 5 minutes away. Perhaps because it was near the magic tower, the interior was luxurious and there were private rooms where one could converse in silence. The serious conversation only began after the drinks and some snacks arrived and, surprisingly, it was the Grandmaster who spoke first. Just as I thought, that's why you came, wasn't it? Wasn't it because of the first basement level? I was genuinely surprised by those words. How on earth did he know that? The story about being chased was just a joke, but was he really investigating my movements? Even so, very few people knew about the first basement, but I didn't deny it. Yes, you're Van Havelian, my voice came out naturally. My gaze fixed on him, trying to catch any slightest reaction from his body, and my muscles tensed reflexively. How did you find out? Depending on the answer, my attitude towards him would change completely. I received information that, among the elves, the fact that the purebloods have not yet regenerated is being interpreted as proof of the pureblood's survival. And shortly after I received this information, you, Lord Viscount, began your outside activities. So, naturally, I thought of the first basement level. Obviously, to organize an expedition, you'd need someone trustworthy, and I figured maybe you'd come looking for me. I was speechless at the GM's impeccable logic. Everything he said was correct, except for one single point. He is sure? Forgiveness? The elves believe Erwin is still alive. I'm asking if that's true. Hearing my question, the GM frowned again, tilting his head as if he didn't understand why I was making such a strange joke. But I was 100% serious. Of course, I had thought about the purebloods. When I was locked in my room, Misha was the first to bring it up. She said that when Erwin was trapped in the first sub-level, the elves were certain she was alive and tried to assemble a rescue team, and she said she would check personally. But, didn't you know? I didn't know. To be precise, I only knew that the pureblood hadn't regenerated yet. The conversation I had with Misha that day boiled down to exactly that. Well, the purebloods still haven't returned. But they said that when purebloods disappear during a dimensional collapse, it takes at least a year to return. So, if anything changes, they'll let us know. So it's best to wait. The special nature of this dimensional collapse made it impossible, this time, to confirm survival through pureblood. That's exactly what the elf said. But then, what did that mean now? Are you talking about dimensional collapse? Are you sure you haven't misunderstood something? As far as I know, there's no such peculiarity linked to purebloods. I heard this information directly from the elves. Then it's really strange. Even when the elf king Armella died in the dimensional collapse, there are records of a new pureblood bearer emerging the following month. What? When I accidentally slammed my hand on the table, the GM jumped and frowned, still unable to accept that information. Wasn't there some kind of communication problem? I don't imagine the elves would have a reason to deceive the Viscount Lord on purpose. Judging by your expression, it seems like that possibility does exist, doesn't it? I couldn't deny it. After all, I carried too many sins. If he were the chief of the elves, someone who always despised me and treated Erwin like a daughter, it would be understandable that he would try to harm me. Even so, there are limits to wanting to screw someone over. When the truth came out, a wave of heat rose in her chest. At the same time, a violent euphoria and relief overflowed from within me. I clenched my fist tightly, forgetting even the resentment I felt towards the elven chief. She is indeed alive. I wasn't wrong. A silence that lasted for a few moments. In the middle of it, the GM, who was drinking his beer in small sips, let out a little laugh, as if he found it all absurd. You are truly impressive. I was sure you'd regained your spirits precisely because you'd heard that story, but, apparently, you knew nothing about it. It was impossible to tell if he was teasing me or genuinely complimenting me. Maybe it was a bit of both. It didn't matter anyway. Cough. I let out a dry cough to change the mood. Pureblood, and Erwin's survival. In truth, just hearing that news made me no longer regret meeting the GM. But there was still something I needed to do. My true objective was something else. In any case, I'm going back to the first basement. Yes, I hope he returned safely. Like you. I cut him off and got straight to the main point. The GM let out a deep sigh. Why that face? You yourself said you expected this ever since you saw me. What we imagine and what actually happens are different things, aren't they? Well, that's true. Even I fully woke up today when I heard the pureblood story. She must be alive and she is alive are different things. And now that the second one has been confirmed, I can truly move forward without anything holding me back. So, what's the answer? For now, I refuse. For now? It wasn't a curt refusal, it had a for now in front of it. In other words, it meant he wanted something. I gave him a look that told him to speak quickly, and the GM let out another long sigh. It's for now in exactly the literal sense. It's not that I'm expecting anything in return. It's just that, knowing Viscount Yondell, even if I refuse, he'll probably find a way to take me anyway. Like that time we went beyond the walls. Didn't you agree that time either? What are you talking about? When did I agree to that? My words made him react like someone with a poked wound. Geez, otherwise he could have just said no. Why are you getting so worked up? Calm down. This isn't good for your health. How do you know? Seriously? Oh, never mind. Okay. It seemed like he still had a lot to say, but in the end, he swallowed it all and shut his mouth. It was the perfect moment to offer him the carrot. I chuckled and spoke in a soothing tone. Don't worry at all. I'm not thinking of dragging you away by force. It's an exploration where we have to risk our lives, and we don't even know for sure when we'll be able to return. I wouldn't do such a thing either. What the hell was that? It was about time he said something, and yet he just stared at me with a strange look. When I merely murmured, he grumbled. If you know all this, why did you act that way on that occasion? Since there was no reason to make a statement that would only harm me, I invoked my right to remain silent and moved on to the next subject. In short, believe it or not, everything I just said is true. I sought you out because I need a reliable and competent wizard. A wizard dragged along by force, who only thinks about running away, is useless. So, this is just a proposal. If you want mana stones, essences, research materials, I'll give you as much as I can. But if you don't want anything and prefer to remain locked in your room, there's nothing I can do. I'll think about it for now. For now, it is. A choice of words that inevitably leaves room for many interpretations. Do you perhaps enjoy being dragged away by force? What? Of course that's not it. If that's not the case, why all the nervousness? I gave him a look that suggested distrust, and the GM quickly explained. I have my own circumstances too. I was just wondering whether or not I should go back to explore the labyrinth. Great then. Think about it seriously. Okay. With that, the recruitment matter was temporarily closed. Afterwards, I held the guy back, who was about to leave, and we stayed drinking beer and talking. It was necessary. If he went back to his room, nobody would know when he'd show up again. Today I needed to make the most of it and create a good impression. I also wanted to know how he's been lately. Since returning from the expedition beyond the walls, we haven't had a reason to meet. He seemed to be following my news through the others, but he still didn't know much about the story of the dimensional collapse and the first sub-level, so we talked about it as time passed. And then, oh, since we're here, could you take a look at this? I pulled a note from my pocket, and he, like a true magician, recognized what it was immediately. Coordinates? That's right, they were coordinates, the ones I received from Arda at that time. If you manage to return alive to Rafdonia, go to the coordinates I'm telling you now. I'll hide something there that might be useful to you. I was genuinely curious. What could be in that place? If something really existed there, then all the notions I had up until now could be turned upside down. An existence I encountered within the labyrinth. Someone who, in a sense, could be called an NPC. If such an existence influenced the world outside the labyrinth, that meant something enormous. Can you find out where it is? I'll check first. He retrieved a magical artifact from the dimensional space that resembled a calculator. He skillfully manipulated the device and, there is, he frowned and recalculated once more, but the result remained exactly the same. Who gave you these coordinates? He placed the artifact on the table with a dry touch and asked suddenly. His reaction only increased my curiosity. Where exactly is this, to react like this? It's just that. And then the GM began to explain. When I finished listening to everything, I was lost in thought. My curiosity only grew. But how, in the world, could I possibly get there? Interesting. It definitely wasn't a place to just go and take a look. Chapter 865, Tragic News, August 8th. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. Clang, clang. A clear sound resonated at regular intervals. What sound was that, after all? The answer was simple. It was the sound produced when a lithium pickaxe struck a wall. Exactly like that. Clang, clang. There I was, wielding a pickaxe, something that had never been part of my destiny. When I looked back, the path I had traveled no longer allowed me to see the end. It looked like a real mine tunnel. Clang, clang. Oh, and just so you know, I wasn't alone. I had the GM's support. I would break the rock, and he would use a small magic golem to transport the fragments out. Furthermore, he would raise columns of earth magic to prevent the tunnel from collapsing and keep spheres of light floating, ensuring visibility. By doing that, it really looks like a real mine. I felt proud of the result of that effort, but at the same time, I wondered what the hell I was doing. Still, there was no other choice. I had been eating and sleeping there for a week, activated in barbarian minor mode for one simple reason: the location indicated by the GM was exactly that one, beneath the city. More precisely, in the basement of the magic tower. That was the point Arda had given me. So, at first, I thought I could simply start on the first floor of the tower and dig down. However, that would never be possible. The GM vehemently rejected the idea. He said that nobody in the tower would just stand by and watch something like that. And, well, I didn't intend to cause a scandal or compromise security either, so it wasn't really what I planned to do. Oh, but that doesn't mean I wasn't willing to push the envelope. Then we'll have to dig a tunnel. You help me, what, me? Why the hell should I, then the only way will be to dig from the first floor of the tower. After all, you were the one who said there was treasure here, And so, I gained a reliable ally named GM. After that, the brute strength of a barbarian and the intelligence of a mage combined, and the tunnel plan took shape. The first step was to descend into the sewer system and dig step by step. But, the basement of the tower doesn't have a sewer system. What? I discovered that beneath the tower, there was only earth. There was a drainage channel, yes, but it was so shallow that it could be excavated and repaired at any time if necessary. And it was just a duct, not a space through which a person could pass. Why would the magic tower do something like that? Well, that's obvious. To build such a large structure, they must have dug deep into the ground, and tried to avoid any empty space underneath as much as possible. Hearing that, it made sense. They say 90% of construction is earth moving. Just look at any construction site in the neighborhood. They spend forever turning over the soil, but when the building starts to go up, it appears in an instant. Anyway, for that reason, we opened a hole in the wall of the nearest sewer and started digging a tunnel towards the magic tower. Clang, clang. That day marked exactly 7 days. According to GM, we had already reached about 70% of our destination, so we advanced 10% per day. By simple calculation, there would only be 3 more days of suffering left. But, to be honest, I was a little skeptical. As someone working directly on the site, I felt it more than anyone. Clang, clang, clank. The further we advanced, the harder the ground became. Even using the same force, each blow of the pickaxe removed fewer fragments. Should I have summoned the warriors? The absence of the barbarian warriors, absolute geniuses of manual labor, weighed more heavily than ever. If we had brought them all, it would have been over long ago. It was a little frustrating, but inevitable. Barbarians, by nature, can't keep secrets. It's not that they're deceitful, disloyal to the clan, or gossips. They just make too many mistakes. Clang. With one last burst of irritation, we paused for our meal inside the tunnel. By now, we're in the same boat. Could you tell me exactly what's at those coordinates? I didn't give the GM any answer, because I didn't know either. Maybe there was absolutely nothing beyond that point. In that case, I'd be a fool tricked by an NPC found in the labyrinth, digging a tunnel all the way under the city. But, apparently, there must be something incredible hidden there. Actually, while investigating some things for this project, I came to the conclusion that if there really is something hidden, it can't be something ordinary. GM, who had previously been completely skeptical about the tunnel plan, was now more motivated than I was. It was as if desire and curiosity had filled a heart that had been emptied by unpaid exploitation. Judging by the structure, if they wanted to hide something there, it must have been even before the tower was built. That means at least several thousand years. The location of the sewer and the drainage pattern as well. When analyzing the plan, I got the feeling that everything was done so that nothing would exist under the tower. The perfect place to hide anything. Oh, really? I reacted apathetically, no matter how excited he got. My partner getting more excited? Of course that's good. I just wish he'd stop planting flags. The more he talked, the more I felt there would be nothing there, or that, if there was, it would be ridiculously disappointing. We've finished eating, so let's get back to work. Yes, and so, 1 day, 2 days, 3, 4, clang. In the blink of an eye, 6 days passed, clang. 1 week and 6 days. The excavation work, which had lasted 13 days in total, had finally come to an end. And then, so there really was something, after all. There was indeed something hidden at the exact coordinates Arda had indicated. We didn't yet know for sure what it was, but it was there. Clang. It was a wall that not even a pickaxe could scratch. According to the GM, there seemed to be some kind of magical interference there, and although it wasn't a very complex scheme, after being stuck in it for about 3 hours, he made some progress. I managed to undo the spell, since my specialty is ancient magic, but be careful. I deactivated it, but I don't know exactly what kind of magic it was. What do you mean? You dissolved it and you don't know it? It didn't seem like a simple shock-absorbing enchantment. Try to get it right. If there's no other hidden spell that even I can't detect, it should break. Really? There was no point in standing still just because we didn't know what was there. As soon as the GM gave the signal, I grabbed not the pickaxe, but my main weapon, the hammer, and brought it down hard. And then, bang! The wall, which had previously not suffered even a scratch, cracked with a bang and shattered, revealing the empty space beyond it. A cubic room, with no entrance or exit, except for the surface I had just destroyed. Shwa! I followed the spheres of light that the GM conjured and went inside to investigate, but there was nothing hidden. Just stone walls, completely empty, except for a single box positioned in the center, placed in such an exposed position, it's a bit suspicious. An unfamiliar wooden box, which didn't seem at all like it was made to be hidden. However, upon seeing it, the GM turned pale, my goddess. That's a box made from wood from the world tree. What? The world tree, in leather, would be equivalent to dragon skin. In metal, it would be equivalent to arc. And they used this material to make a simple box? What on earth could be kept in there? Is the box intact? Doesn't it have any trap spells or anything like that? Yes, nothing. From what I've checked, there's nothing like that. That was enough. Without hesitation, I opened the box with a swift movement, and then, hooong! The instant I opened it, an unfamiliar wave surged through the air, as if something sealed had been released into the world. But instead of overthinking it, the first step was to see the contents. That is, inside, there was a diamond-shaped jewel. What was the purpose of that object? While I examined it suspiciously, the GM reacted first, again, holy goddess, hey, don't tell me you know what that is too, and no, I mean, it's just that. He began to stammer, clearly nervous. It was obvious he knew something. It seemed more like he had no idea how to explain it than that he was clueless. It was the kind of behavior someone exhibits when trying to hide something. If there had been nothing to fear, he would have already explained it simply and directly. I could examine it a little more closely? Absolutely not. Under normal circumstances, maybe, but not when that wretch was practically drooling over the jewel. Instinctively, I sensed danger and, to keep it safe, I tried to store it within my dimensional space. Jing. What? Why isn't it working? Hick. And why on earth was he cringing at the sight of that? Everything was a big question mark, but there was no time for calm reflection. Pit-eye. Suddenly, an urgent alarm filled the entire room. It wasn't coming from the room itself. Pit-eye. Listening carefully, the source of the sound was none other than inside the GM's clothes. He hurriedly pulled something that looked like a pager from inside his chest pocket. Why is this happening? What is it now? It is a communication device given only to masters of magic schools. For security reasons, it does not use spoken language, only encrypted signals. What kind of code is that? And what is the meaning of this sign? Good. Hurry. Faced with my pressure, he finally gave an answer. This is an emergency alert from the magic tower, ordering you to stop everything and assemble immediately. Judging by the timing, it seems quite likely that it's our fault. I think we'd better get out of here soon. What do you think? Good idea. Coincidentally, I thought so too. A treasure hidden beneath the magic tower. An alarm sounding the instant we retrieve it. There was no way this could be a coincidence. Let's go. Let's just run for now and figure it out later. We ran through the tunnel we had painstakingly dug for over 10 days. We ran like never before. Oh, and it wasn't just because of the alarm triggered by the GM. Boom, thump, thump, thump. Just as I was about to throw the GM over my shoulder and run off, the floor began to crumble. It was reasonable to suspect it was because I'd picked up the gem, but even if it wasn't, it wouldn't be surprising if it gave way. Even though we'd supported the ceiling with columns, how strong could a tunnel dug haphazardly by just two people possibly be? Tap, tap, tap. To avoid being buried alive, we ran with all our might, and, after a narrow escape, a real race against collapse, we barely managed to get out of the tunnel and reach the sewer. Well, even if we were imprisoned, I wouldn't die. Perhaps it would take longer to escape or, worse, they would have to wait for someone to come and rescue them, buried under the rubble. The new shield barbarian doesn't die. Of course, that doesn't apply to him. Phew. GM was sweating profusely, like someone who had just escaped death. But there was no time for rest. If we were indeed the cause of the state of emergency, we needed to get out of the city as quickly as possible and come up with an alibi. Tap, tap, tap. So we started running again at full speed. The low ceiling of the sewer didn't allow me to activate gigantification. I had to run like an agile character, light and fast. And soon we reached the exit. There we separated. Go to the Holy Land first. As soon as the situation is cleared up, I will meet you. The Grand Master went to the magic tower to understand what was happening, and I discreetly made my way to the sacred land to sleep. And then, you finally arrived. As soon as dawn broke the next day, the GM appeared at the sanctuary, and I was finally able to satisfy the curiosity that had kept me awake at night. So what is this jewel, after all? It seemed as if he had already organized his thoughts during the night. This time he explained without any hesitation. Of course, still, like a true magician, he rattled off a bunch of difficult and useless terms. Although, okay, summarize it in one sentence. To summarize the essentials, this jewel had a very specific purpose. In other words, simply put, that jewel allows one to create and manage the spiritual world known as the gathering of evil spirits. It was as if I could become the god of Ghostbusters. Chapter 866, Influx, 1/5. To resurrect the Ghostbusters. No, more than that, to become the ruler of that place. That might interest me. In truth, the second part mattered little to me. Just the thought that the community could be restored made my heart race without me even realizing it. And it's no wonder, since Oral Gavis unilaterally shut down the server. How much has it been missed? There's a kind of stress that only dissipates with modern and constant conversations, and without that, I felt suffocated, like being forced to quit smoking. Of course, I have Sven Parav, the former evil spirit, in the category of real acquaintances, but revealing my evil identity for such a reason would be absurd, and he's saying he can bring her back. This is something I need to do at all costs, more than just relieving stress. If I restore that, I could communicate with my colleagues who should be on the first basement, through Sven Parav. Badum. Just imagining it made my heart feel like it was about to leap out of my chest, but I tried to contain my excitement and keep a neutral face. After all, a poker face is essential in any negotiation. If it really isn't very useful to you, I could take it and study it a bit. Don't even think about it. What? Did he think he could get this for free? Acting like it was nothing was pointless. His eyes were already brimming with despair. Without beating around the bush, I simply stated my conditions. Join the Anabata clan. Promise to accompany me to the first subterranean level. Full authority and complete sharing of research results on spiritual space. What? If you accept these conditions, I will deliver. And I'm warning you now, there is no other option. I maintained an inflexible stance, closing any room for bargaining. The rest depended on the GM. I accept. I managed to recruit an orange-clad, wizarding CEO. After concluding the recruitment issue, we moved on to the next topic. Actually, I was just as curious about that as I was about the jewel. So that siren, what was it all about? Right after I stole the jewel, the alarm went off everywhere. Was that really a coincidence? Oh, that's right, that happened. As if he had completely forgotten, the GM realized what was happening and began to explain about yesterday's alarm. To get straight to the point, it seems the alarm really did go off because we found this item. What does it seem like? So it's not a conclusion, but rather a guess? I frowned as I interrupted him, but he seemed used to this sort of thing and remained unresponsive. When I arrived at the Magic Tower, there were only a few masters of the schools. Oh, and a Knight of the Order of the Rose. Only a few? Yes. When I arrived, it was already late. The forces that had gathered early had already left, and we were left waiting to decide whether or not to provide support. Hearing the rest, it seemed the masters were all confused, not understanding what was happening, and the Knight of the Order of the Rose who remained also offered no explanation. So they stayed there, knowing nothing, waiting for hours. Shortly before dawn, the Master of the Tower and the Knight of the Order of the Rose returned. Their faces were tense, as if they were treading on eggshells before royalty. It was clear that something had gone wrong. And then, the order to assemble troops was cancelled shortly afterward, and when I discreetly asked one of the masters I know, he said they had gone to the sewers. What? To the sewers? At this point, it was no longer speculation, it was practically a fact. There aren't enough coincidences to connect all of this. Then why did you speak like that? A way of speaking? Let's say, get rid of that. That way of speaking won't help you in life at all. It was sincere advice, but he still showed no reaction. So, we moved on to the next topic. But, where exactly did you get those coordinates? No matter how I look at it, it seems like the Magic Tower and the royal family were conspiring to hide them. How far should I tell the story? After thinking for a moment, I quickly decided, now we're in the same boat. So I revealed pretty much everything that had happened in the labyrinth. To be honest, I also wanted to vent and ask someone for their opinion. Go to the coordinates I'm giving you now. I'm going to hide something that might be useful to you, and the object really exists. And that made everything even more confusing. Wasn't the Arta I knew an NPC? Perhaps that was indeed the case. After all, no hidden piece of the labyrinth had ever been able to affect the outside world, only the world inside the labyrinth. So, let's see if I understood correctly. After hearing the whole story, the GM had a strange expression on his face. Are you saying that someone named Arta, whom you met inside the labyrinth, gave you those coordinates, and that he hid something there to help you? That's right. And, as I said before, he claimed to have come from the past. The GM seemed to be trying to decide if I was serious or not. Understandably, it was a tough story to swallow, but perhaps he sensed that I wasn't joking. If what you're saying is true, Lord Viscount, it would be one of two cases. After reflecting for a while, he finally spoke. Two? Yes. First, Arda would have actually used an ancient magical artifact to travel from the past to beyond the dimension of the labyrinth. I had already considered that. If there are evil spirits from other dimensions, it wouldn't be impossible for someone to come directly to the labyrinth from another timeline, although it seemed unlikely. And the second one? A phenomenon caused by the very nature of the labyrinth. Explain it simply. You've personally been beyond the city walls. Out there, the world is almost identical to the labyrinth, full of similar monsters and landscapes. Now I knew where he was going with this. The labyrinth was clearly created to mimic reality, and that includes the Arda that you found. He was talking about the original Arda, perhaps this sounds complicated, so I'll explain it better. In the real story, Arda managed to travel through time and found future A. To help him, he buried a treasure deep in the earth, even before the magic tower existed. But A, for some reason, never managed to find it. The labyrinth recreated this event based on the original story, and you relived this story in the role of A. The explanation was kind, but it didn't offer the new information I was hoping for. I had also thought about that and, in fact, considered it the most likely hypothesis. The hidden secrets of the labyrinth always had an original inspiration. There was only one point that didn't fit. So, what about the royalty? And the magic tower? They already knew there was something buried there, didn't they? Well, I don't know, but there's certainly some secret or conspiracy we're unaware of. Perhaps they simply didn't know the exact location. What a joke. 1 minute he was saying the treasure might be something secretly guarded by them, and now he comes up with this. I opened everything and asked for an opinion and got nothing in return. Tisk. In the end, it seemed like I would have to figure it out on my own. Deep down, I had expected it, but reviving the community using the jewel was taking much longer than we imagined. Even after handing over the jewel so he could study it at his leisure, there was still no significant progress. However, it wasn't entirely fruitless. From now on, I will call this jewel the Fragment of Origin. He gave it a name. And not just any name, Fragment of the Origin. Does it have anything to do with the power of origin? After exploring Arda's secret base, it was hard to believe it was just a catchy name. I insisted he explain the reason for that name, and after hesitating a bit, he finally spilled the beans. Someone I know used that name to refer to something very similar. Who? Oral Gavis, a great magician, little known to the general public. Okay, that old man. Well, the original owner of the community was that old man. After all, the GM was managing it with authority granted by that old man, and for some reason, that old man had unilaterally deactivated the community server. Fragment of the Origin. That got me thinking. Judging by the name Fragment, it probably wasn't complete. If we gathered all the fragments, we would form the power of origin, and perhaps it would be possible to create a new labyrinth, or something like that? Impossible to know yet, but if we continue studying, maybe we'll discover something. For now, I've left that question aside. Swish, I slowly raised my head upwards, more precisely, towards the black tower that rose so high it seemed to touch the sky. Wow, it's really tilting. If you can see it so clearly even up close, isn't that dangerous, Naya? The magic tower, which had always stood motionless in the same place, was now slightly tilted, like that famous European tower, probably a consequence of the collapse of the underground tunnel. Of course, since people were completely unaware of this fact, the incident of the leaning magic tower became a major topic of conversation, and thanks to this, it is said that the number of tourists increased, revitalizing the surrounding businesses. Wow, by the way, there are so many people. Can't you get a little bigger, Naya? That way I can climb on your shoulder. You think that's possible? I laughed and ruffled Miss Shaw's hair. The magic tower plaza was completely packed, but they weren't just there to see the leaning tower. There was another event happening today. Look, they're coming. With growing murmurs, a long procession approached in the distance. A line of condemned men, bound like prisoners. Those are Nork's disgusting dogs. Damn them. Die. The crowd cursed them as the Norkians were escorted by soldiers down the main avenue. This was the final entry method decided upon between the royal family of Raftonia and Nork. Because of you, I lost my home and my entire family. Die. Officially, Nork lost the war. They surrendered completely and were now on their way to the capital to face trial. And then, they will receive a sentence of forced labor in service of the country. The citizens cheered as they watched those condemned men being dragged away like criminals, but I knew it was all part of a very well-planned script. Perhaps that's why. More E. It seemed no coincidence when a man emerged from the crowd and stormed the procession. Puak. The dagger lodged itself in the abdomen of a bound Norkian, but perhaps it was the first time the attacker had actually stabbed someone. The wounded man remained motionless. The one who stabbed him, however, froze, dropped the weapon, and recoiled in shock, as if thinking, what have I done? The wounded Norkian walked slowly towards him. Kaya. Even handcuffed, his physique was so imposing that he seemed capable of easily killing several men. The audience recoiled, imagining the worst, but nothing of the sort happened. Thud. The Norkian, with his stern face, showed no anger toward the man who had wounded him. He did not protest the injustice. He simply knelt on the ground and let the tears fall without stopping. I'm sorry. I just wanted to live. I was born in that filthy hole. They told me to fight. He was crying like a child, and the assailant, stunned, could only manage to ask his age. 17. I'm 17 years old. 17? At that size? Hard to believe, but looking closely, there were still youthful features. The same age as my son. I'm sorry. How can someone so young? The man couldn't continue when he saw the countless scars etched onto that enormous body. In Raftonia, someone of that age couldn't even enter the labyrinth. But in Nork, that was routine. In a city that had completely abandoned laws and institutions and only recognized strength, who cared about age? I'm sorry. I just wanted to live. I'm sorry for what I caused. The Norkian pressed his forehead to the filthy ground, weeping and begging for forgiveness, and the man simply couldn't do anything more. Soon, the watching soldiers immobilized his arms and confiscated his weapon, and then, clack, clack, the reporters captured the moment with their magic instruments. Chapter 867, Influx, 2/5. After the procession of the chained Norkians, what happened next was simple. The newspapers competed to get headlines. During escort, Norkians attacked, child cries and begs for forgiveness. I just wanted to live, a tearful confession. The protagonist of the first trial of war criminals in Nork is a 16-year-old girl. Death sentence in the first instance, but, acknowledging guilt, there will be no appeal. Exclusive interview, about being born in Nork, beginning with the incident at the Magic Tower Square and following the subsequent administrative timeline, related news poured in non-stop. Every morning I gathered and read each one, and so they piled up like a mountain on the first floor. Feeling the need to organize, I was arranging everything in chronological order when, Tisk, a catchy title immediately caught the eye. The royal family finally speaks out. The labyrinth portal was open 2 months ago, but dimensional collapse led to its annihilation. It was news from 3 weeks ago. The royal family of Raftonia revealed for the first time the exact details of what had happened. My name being engraved on the Stone of Honor had already made it public that the portal had been opened by the royal family, but this was the first time the full details were released to the public. The total number of magic stones has dropped by 80% compared to the previous year. Is the end truly near? The lineage of high-level adventurers has dried up. End of another golden generation. The fall of the giants. Most of the Anabata clan did not return alive. Inflation hits a historic record, 1.7 times higher than during the revolt of the Iron Walls. After the dimensional collapse event became public, the pattern of fear-mongering truly began. Newspapers, seemingly ignoring the royal family's perspective, daily reinforced the idea of a national crisis, and thus the end of the world theory gained traction among citizens, increasing collective panic. And when this fear reached its peak, shocking statement by Count Erdiang, executing Norkians is a national waste. They should be condemned to forced labor in the labyrinth to extract magic stones. This was the first time this topic came up. Marquis emperors. That's absurd. To comfort the citizens who lost their families, they must all be beheaded. Someone stood up shouting that it was absolutely unacceptable. The citizens' song echoes in the square. The organizer of the event says that Norkians also share the same roots as us and deserve a chance at redemption. And someone fully supported the idea. It was truly hilarious to watch. A song of the citizens? A peaceful demonstration singing in the square? The mere fact that this is possible is already a comedy. The original Raftonia would not tolerate something like this. They would react immediately, and if necessary, use force to disperse any gathering. But look at the photos in the newspaper. Soldiers lined up alongside the demonstrators just watching without doing anything. It's really happening exactly as those men said. A suffocating feeling already gripped my chest, but I didn't feel like calling the deceived citizens savages or anything like that. It's not their fault. In fact, it's almost natural. Besides, modern people aren't very different, ish. Still, the bitter taste in my mouth was inevitable. Now I finally understood why all dictators start by controlling the press. The media is the gateway to persuasion. When political power makes decisions unilaterally, the press talks non-stop to convince the citizens, and they remain powerless. In Raftonia, there isn't even such a thing as objective international news. News that the royal family wants. Demonstrations that the royal family wants. Administrative orders that the royal family wants. Only these 3 things happened every day in Raftonia, and very few people knew that it was all a grand charade. While I was organizing the newspapers, my hand suddenly stopped. It was yesterday's paper. It had nothing to do with Nork or the royal family, and it wasn't even a headline. It was discreetly on the second page. Last month, the number of executions of evil spirits rose for the first time in 3 years. Probably nothing special, right? The campfire flickered in the forest clearing. I watched the young barbarians lined up haphazardly and shouted, "Congratulations, young warriors." In Dungeon and Stone, when choosing the barbarian class, this is the first process everyone goes through, the coming-of-age ceremony. Normally, here they would choose a weapon and be sent to the labyrinth. But, at least this time, that was impossible. The labyrinth had not yet been opened. From today onward, you will find your own weapon and be reborn as true warriors. Therefore, I proceeded with the event using a slightly modified version of my usual speech. After all, we can't just skip the coming-of-age ceremony just because they can't go to the labyrinth, right? Now, come forward one at a time and choose the weapon that suits you best. And, of course, leather boots would be distributed as standard equipment, a revolution that arose after I became chief of the tribe. Before, in addition to the boots, we also gave out 2 potions, but I've set that aside for now. Nobody would enter the labyrinth now, and if I gave them out beforehand, someone would surely use them foolishly. It was more rational to give out the potions only when the labyrinth was opened, Baal. As soon as the ceremony began, the young warriors let out a unanimous shout. Actually, it was a tradition I created. When I first distributed leather boots and 2 potions, the excited shout seemed like a great way to identify any infiltrating evil spirits. While everyone was shouting, I spotted a few here and there who looked dazed and confused, and I, pretending not to notice, concluded the coming-of-age ceremony as usual. For the first time, 4 evil spirits appeared in a single ceremony. Could something really be going on? That article in the newspaper seemed even more significant now. Recently, I had been leaving the ceremonies in the hands of Aner and Karen, but after that news, I decided to conduct them personally as a precaution. And then the number of people increased like that? I need to investigate. But finding out immediately would be a huge hassle. Yes, I could drag them somewhere and forcefully extract information, but in that case, I would have to silence them afterward. If it got around that the barbarian chief had left a possessed warrior alive, it would be a scandal. The best thing to do would be to bring them into the community and ask them there, but nobody knew when that would be possible. So, I went looking for the GM after a long time. Researchers need to be nudged regularly to produce results. After all, I left the tent and went to where he was. It didn't take even 15 minutes. He practically lived in the sacred barbarian land now. "Oh, you came? So, nothing new today? Haha. Yet, no progress." I gave him a silent, pressured look as he offered an awkward smile, pulled up a chair, and sat down. "So, what brings you here today, are you settling in well here? I have nothing to complain about. In any case, I can't really leave." Actually, setting up a makeshift laboratory here was his choice. With a state of emergency at the magic tower because of the origin fragment, he said he'd be afraid to take the item there. He asked for a place to research in secrecy, saying that the barbarian Holy Land was the safest location. So I arranged for one of the empty houses. It was an isolated region where there were almost no barbarians, since construction had been interrupted by the economic crisis. So, to what do I owe the visit? Tisk. Do I seem like someone who only shows up when they need something? I took one of the newspapers I had already set aside from my pocket and threw it on the table in front of him. And then, last month, the number of executions of evil spirits rose for the first time in 3 years. Upon seeing the circled item, he startled slightly. Why are you showing me this? I thought you might know something. Oh, you really know? Judging by your expression, it seems you have some idea, doesn't it? I asked, trying to probe him, and he remained silent for a moment, as if organizing his thoughts, before finally speaking. "Before I answer, may I ask a question? Viscount Yondell, how do you intend to use the spiritual space created from the fragment of origin?" He just came up with that out of nowhere. Since he'd never brought it up before, I'd let it go until now too. I intended to use it as is, to gather the evil spirits and observe them, simply out of curiosity, of course. I shook my head and presented the logical reason why I couldn't help but be interested in Ghostbusters, the royal family, Nork, the magic tower, the nobility. There are countless powers in this world. The only reason the evil spirits haven't united is because they haven't been able to gather externally. But I believe they are a force with enormous potential. Do you intend to control them? To some extent. It would be good to have a faction that supports me. There's no guarantee they'll be unconditionally loyal to you, Lord Viscount. She smiled briefly. Haven't you seen what the city has been like lately? With those words, the GM immediately shut his mouth. He seemed to understand exactly what I meant, but perhaps he still had a lingering doubt. Is that really the only reason? I pretended to hesitate a little and answered carefully, as if I were revealing a secret. In fact, I had decided that I would speak up to that point. There is an evil spirit in the Anabrata clan, and I intend to use the spiritual realm to try to make contact with it. Are you satisfied now? He finally seemed to fully understand my motivation and nodded with relief. It was clear he'd been brooding over it alone for some time. Okay, now it's your turn to answer. That makes it difficult. When I rolled my shoulders as if to stretch my body, the GM panicked and quickly said, "It's not that I didn't want to answer. I was just thinking about how to explain it. Just speak. I'll understand in my own way, if that's the case. In fact, cases of evil spirits have increased quite a bit recently." I let out a slow sigh. So those four at once weren't a coincidence. Can you tell me the reason? Good. His explanation was lengthy. He tried to translate modern-day terms into concepts from this world so that I could understand. Things like evil spirits gathering offline after the Ghostbusters show shut down, supposedly rescuing one of them about to be executed, and all this information emerging from that process. I decided to hear about those circumstances in detail later. For now, from my perspective, the last sentence was sufficient, they say that, with the sudden disappearance of people becoming a global issue, everyone is starting to play that game. What the hell? Why on earth would people play a game where they could disappear? It seemed like I could already hear the desperate cries of the newcomers trapped in a game doomed to disaster. Chapter 868, Influx, 3/5. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. Were they crazy? At first, that was the feeling, astonishment and disbelief. But, thinking about it more, it wasn't such a difficult phenomenon to understand. Let's face it, a game that makes people disappear? It's an urban legend interesting enough to pique curiosity. No, actually, it's not even just a legend. It's something that's really happening. With the rumors spreading, it was natural that the number of newcomers would explode. The problem is, we can't look at this in such a simplistic way. Why hadn't any of this happened until now? Even though time on Earth runs much slower than here, almost 20 years had passed since the first evil spirit from Earth appeared in this world. And yet, no one even suspected that the game had any connection to disappearances. There wasn't even a similar rumor. In short, someone was blocking this information on purpose. But then, suddenly, the information spread. Is it really a coincidence? Of course, that's a possibility. Perhaps someone was nearby when they finished the game, and the reports started circulating. Or maybe someone investigated the disappearances relentlessly. Both hypotheses are plausible. After all, the very reason Bill started the game was my disappearance. Although, something here doesn't smell right to me. To begin with, who the hell created the hacked version? Could an ordinary civilian, just by tinkering with the code, transform a game into something that automatically throws someone into another world upon completion? I highly doubt it. It's far more convincing to think that the same scoundrels who threw us into this decided to change their minds and distribute the cheat. So, is this influx of newcomers coming in now also their doing? For now, this seems to be the most likely possibility. But I can't understand their intentions at all. Did they decide to resort to a brute force approach with numbers because the Abyss Gate showed no signs of opening, no matter how many people they sent? How am I supposed to know what's going on in those bastards' heads? Nothing. I was just talking to myself. Finally, listening to the GM, I learned several very unfortunate things. With the urban legend spreading, more and more people started playing, and the hacked version was altered, even creating a difficulty mode 300 times higher, and now anyone without any prior knowledge can beat it on their first try and is dragged here without even knowing how. Damn, I can even picture the future of the newcomers being crushed the moment the labyrinth opens. I, who already had experience, almost met my end stepping into a trap. My heart was heavy. Is there nothing I can do? It would be a waste to just let them die. I'll have to think seriously about that. Chief of an entire race, Viscount of Raftonia, of the Anabata clan. No, let's leave that aside for now. Anyway, I don't like just standing there watching. After all, I am no longer the naked barbarian with a single shield to defend myself. After that, time flew by. If I were to organize everything that happened in the meantime, there were a whole lot of events. I attended a meeting of the royal family, and I also went to the race's meeting. You lied, didn't you? About the purebloods? The chief of the elven race, whom I met at the racial assembly, didn't even blink at my sideways glance in obvious discomfort. He simply ignored me. Everyone should know, since they received the official statement from the royal family, tisk, if they send a coercive document like that, what do they expect us to do? Supporting the arming of young people who will become adventurers. I can understand that. But how do they intend to create 3,000 new adventurers out of thin air? Speak up. If you represent humanity, have the decency to say something. Well, Raftonia is facing a serious national crisis right now, so we need to join forces. The meeting ended up becoming nothing more than a firing range where they vented their frustration against the royals, and, in the end, the statement sent by the royal family was not revoked. And so the meeting concluded. Oh, it finally came. Has it made its decision? Half of it, for now. Half, that is. Armin appeared soon after, bringing a condition regarding the recruitment proposal. I couldn't convince everyone to join us down to the first basement level, but they agreed to explore the labyrinth with us for now. They said they want to be more cautious when it comes to the first basement level. I can't give a definitive answer, but even if we can't go to the first basement together, until then we intend to fully support your lordship and follow your orders. What do you think? What do I think? Simple. Let's do it. I accepted without hesitation. There was nothing to lose. We weren't going down to the first basement level now anyway. It was better to form the group first. After that, recruiting new members would be much easier. Then I'll be going. Yes, proceed with caution. After meeting Armin, I stopped going out to recruit members, but I still kept quite busy. Checking the news daily was the bare minimum. In addition, I frequently visited the sanctuary to accompany the young warriors who would make the first foray into the labyrinth as soon as it opened. Well, actually, I only showed up occasionally to give speeches and train their minds. The real training was left to Ainer and Karen, Baalaah, break Han's head open the moment you see him. And there was another special obligation, should it arise. That damned guild master. He insisted so much that I ended up arranging a few days to campaign alongside him. My name is now inscribed on the Stone of Honor. The heroic story of saving countless adventurers during the dimensional collapse, added to the fact that the number of high-level adventurers has recently plummeted. All these factors combined worked, and the guild master, after publicly receiving my support, managed to avoid being fired and kept his position. Apparently, the guild members came to believe I was their supporter, and I didn't bother to deny it. After all, that was the agreement from the beginning, and, yes, here it is, if you're finished talking, let go of my hand right now, ngh, as long as I get what's due to me, that's all that matters. Besides, having the head of a gigantic organization like the Adventurers Guild under my influence was also a good thing. After receiving the dragon heart, I immediately went to the sacred land and revived the shaman. Is revive the right word for it? According to the young shaman, who even shed tears wanting to save his master, it would take time for him to regain consciousness. When the shaman awakens, I can continue inscribing the marks. Although I hadn't yet gathered the materials, I would do so little by little. Since I left that room, everything seemed to be progressing smoothly, and I felt my motivation blossoming, proceeding without greed, step by step. One day I will reach the first basement, and the Ghostbusters project is also progressing in some way. The GM's research finally yielded results, and the first test was completed a few days ago. Although the community was empty, just me and the GM, he said that transferring the server that existing players used would require more research, or something like that. He didn't seem very confident when he said that, so I was a little doubtful, but not too worried. If it can't be done, we'll just have to manage. Anyway, check. I leafed through the newspaper before starting my day's agenda. If the recollections up to now were about how I spent my previous days, then everything about how the outside world had changed was contained in these newspapers. About how the Raftonian royal family finally suspended the executions of Nork's citizens due to citizen opposition. Regarding how prices have skyrocketed again, as if someone had manipulated them, increasing anxiety across the country. Regarding how, at the current consumption rate, mana stone reserves would be depleted within a few months, accompanied by professional statistics that would normally never make it into an article. The news was all stressful just to read, but I couldn't simply shut my ears to it, so I read the newspaper every day without fail. But, of course, they're ruining the mood first thing in the morning. The day's headline also made me frown as soon as I saw it. Chaotic times, adventurer registration rate hits record high, young heroes on the rise, emergency of heroes, my ass. Currently, the entire city was creating an atmosphere where those who refused to enter the labyrinth were treated as the biggest cowards in the world. No, it was getting to the point where they were being treated like traitors. All of this was because of the machinations of the royal family. A retired adventurer decides to return to the labyrinth. His family is worried, but supportive. Young people complain, we want to become adventurers as soon as possible to help. With returning veterans and children who haven't even reached adulthood saying they want to enter the labyrinth as soon as possible, how could we not create this atmosphere? Anyway, it will appear soon. In fact, I already knew exactly what the next news would be. After setting the tone like that, what would come next was obvious. They would say they intended to use Nork as adventurers, and then they would demand that they live confined in Bifron, and they would present a series of legal devices to contain them, trying to stifle public fear and outrage. Tisk. I closed the newspaper and tossed it aside. The instant I stood up to get ready, Miss Shah ran up to me. Where are you going today, Naya? To the palace. Why there? There's no meeting of the Royal Council today, is there? My request for a hearing has finally been accepted. A hearing? Miss Shah was startled, but since there wasn't much time before my appointment, I left home without giving a detailed explanation. And then, HUU, the immortal palace located in the center of the 12 palaces. No, the palace of the New World. Well, perhaps the distinction is meaningless. If Marketer Syrian's words are true, these two may be the same person. Oh, and just so you know, I didn't get to see the face of the King of the New World as I had hoped. It's been a while. Where is the King of the New World? Shouldn't you be a little more careful with your words? When I glanced at her to tell her not to make pointless remarks, Astereth, who had come to greet me, smiled and led me inside. And once again, I had to ask, where is the king of the new world? He is sleeping, exhausted from dealing with the matters of state. Exhausted from dealing with the matters of state, my ass. He's probably inside that strange mechanical device, trying to hold on to what little life he has left. Judging by the looks of it, he hasn't left it even once since then. If that's the case, why did you accept my request for a hearing? I couldn't help the hint of irritation that crept into my voice. I naturally thought it would take time to wake him up or something, so I waited patiently until now. But all I see is this guy's face. Believe it or not, His Majesty the King has delegated considerable authority to me. Honestly, to be frank, I probably know more and can do more than the current Prime Minister, wouldn't you say? So you're saying that if I have something to say, I should say it to you? Asteroda shrugged, as if to say obviously, and then, without further complaints, I got straight to the point. Give me the Secret Security Department. Oh, was that too straightforward? Seeing the look of utter incomprehension on her face, I gently added an explanation. I've decided I want to become a hunter of evil spirits. He's a smart guy, so that should be enough for him to understand. What am I saying? Chapter 869, Influx, 4/5, Secret Security Department. A state institution directly subordinate to the royal family of Raftonia, although, nowadays, its influence is greatly reduced. The luster of its former glory had long since faded. Infiltration, espionage, and covert operations were separated and passed on to the Order of the Rose. An investigative authority over the nobles was transferred when Moslin emerged. Currently, its main function is practically to locate and execute evil spirits. Perhaps that's why the name ends with department and not agency. In its heyday, it was called the Secret Security Agency. When the era of the New World King began, everything was reshaped. That was one of the reasons why I felt a little lost when I arrived in this world. More than 150 years have passed since the time in which Dungeon and Stone takes place, and there are countless differences compared to what I knew. For example, the Order of the Rose. In the game, there wasn't even a group with that name. The Secret Department of Security, huh? Astereth murmured this, as if she were organizing her thoughts while looking at me. You're probably not talking about actually hunting and killing evil spirits. Are you thinking of gathering them and forming some kind of group of your own? As expected of a clever fellow, he grasped my intention immediately, although I needed to correct a small misunderstanding. I don't intend to form a particular group. I was direct and completely honest. I'm just a little frustrated, that's all. If they accept even Nork because they're short of magic stones, then why not accept evil spirits? Especially considering that Nork is infested with evil spirits. Suppressing evil spirits at this point is not only useless, it's practically wasted effort. I can't deny it. Surprisingly, Asteroda nodded instead of reacting aggressively. Of course, this didn't mean he was willing to give in. From what I see, in the end you want to reinstate the policy of including evil spirits that was discarded in the past. Forget it. It's impossible. Why? His Majesty does not wish their civilization to contaminate this world. Asteroda was categorical, and it wasn't difficult to understand what he meant. Democracy, revolution, religion, modern technology. For those who govern this city, the modern mentality of people like us would never be welcome. And to think that this hypocrite creates elevators, board games, and all sorts of modern junk. In any case, I understood the meaning perfectly. In fact, I was already expecting to receive exactly that kind of response. That's why I was also ready to give mine. That's precisely why I need to take over the Secret Security Department. Of course, I didn't expect you to give up so easily. So tell me, what's the reason? Because I can control and prevent in advance everything you fear. And if anyone decides to disobey me and maces up, I just need to put that person on the beating. Well, that would be possible, in fact. But, from our point of view, we are already handling the situation well. There is no reason to allow an unnecessary risk. Asteroda didn't waste time discussing the feasibility of my plan, he went straight to the heart of the matter. So tell me, why should we grant your request? Neither Astereth nor the King of the New World were my parents, to simply give me whatever I wanted because I threw a tantrum. But that didn't worry me. Luckily, I had a free pass. His Majesty must have said this before falling asleep, to attend to everything I demand from now on, and to cooperate with me. Asteroda grimaced, as if that phrase were an abusive interpretation. This was during the mission to assassinate the former Prime Minister, in the midst of war. Oh, so you mean His Majesty woke up in the middle of the process and repeated that to you? My comment was mocking enough for anyone to notice, but he didn't respond. Silence. And that was already an answer. What? If he never said anything like that, were you trying to interpret His Majesty's thoughts on your own and distort the orders? Once again, Asteroda chose silence. It was time to deliver the final blow. That day, when I came here, The king of the New World said he would grant me 5 requests. The first request, the prime minister, had already been fulfilled. 4 remained, and until now, no new request had been given to me. But one thing was certain, and what exactly are you trying to say by that? Wow, so excited. The king of the New World clearly has something he wants from me, and he has decided to fully support me in this endeavor. Therefore, you should also cooperate with me. Haha, even without knowing what the next command will be, it's not a command, but a request. I would appreciate it if you paid attention to the wording. Or are you planning to arbitrarily interpret His Majesty's words this time as well? After a long silence, Astereth finally replied, I'll think about it. Which, in practice, was equivalent to permit. It wasn't a confirmation yet, but the resistance was much weaker than I had anticipated. I haven't even mentioned all the advantages that would arise if he granted my request. This only made me more puzzled. That guy has absolute loyalty to the royal family buried in his head, but even so, it was too easy. Anyone who has dealt with the royal family a few times knows how to interpret this correctly. They're plotting something else. Actually, this paranoia has only gotten worse lately. It's like everything is strange. Like, from the moment I woke up in this world until now, I've been playing in someone else's palm the whole time. This feeling has gotten worse recently, but that wasn't something to think about right now. Oh, and so, what was that all about? If you talk like that, how do you expect me to know what you're talking about? I asked one last question that intrigued me before leaving. Why on earth did you summon the Lord of Tears? The very question to which I couldn't get an answer, no matter how many times I asked the current prime minister or the various influential nobles with whom I had connections. But I thought that perhaps Asteroda could be different. But, of course, my expectation was dashed. Again, he simply shut up, so I had to be more direct. The goal was to see if more people would die. Is that it? I have no idea what's going on. The dimensional collapse. I interrupted him, and while I took a moment to catch my breath, I kept my gaze fixed on his eyes. You guys were the ones who blew that thing up, weren't you? I asked, trying my best to contain my emotions. He didn't react, not a single change in expression. Tisk, I wanted to at least try to read something on his face and he laughed, suddenly, without warning. And then, and if it had been, what would have changed? He asked in a mocking tone, but it didn't seem like a mockery directed only at me. It seemed like he was mocking something much bigger. Go away for today. Regarding the Secret Security Department, I'll give you an answer after I've thought about it. Asteroda ended the conversation abruptly. That was all for now. Then I asked if I could see Rana and Hyunbil before leaving, and he told me to do as I pleased. So I went there. Nothing had changed since my last visit. Rana was still unconscious. You said you would always come. Hyunbil had a sour, sulky expression. I had to spend a good amount of time calming her down and cheering her up. And then, did something happen while I was away? The incidents weren't on your side, Oppa. There's been a lot of talk lately about the dimensional collapse and what else. I thought you'd been here the whole time? Basically, yes. Basically, you're saying? When I asked why I didn't understand what she meant, Hyunbil gave me a brief explanation. She had grown bored of being confined to this room, so she wandered around the palace and gradually made acquaintances, apparently, starting with the maid who brought her meals, then the gardener, and even the head chef. Apparently, the knights didn't particularly try to stop her activities, and recently, it seems that even some of the knights have begun to reciprocate her greetings. You're not doing this just because you were bored, are you? Of course not. I also need to have at least a basic understanding of how the world outside is working, don't you think? I knew it. Hyunbil is the type that would survive well anywhere she was thrown. So tell me, anything will do. The people I've become close to here always end up having some kind of limit, you know? They filter what they say. After that, I told Hyunbil, who said she was almost going crazy with boredom, everything that had happened to me. The Lord of the Floor, the dimensional collapse. Perhaps because of the sensational topics that couldn't possibly be boring, Hyunbil listened with great interest. Maybe that's why. Suddenly, that little dragon in the gnome tree came to mind. She also always begged me to tell her stories whenever I visited her, and I listened with intense concentration all day. Anyway, that's it. Even if I wanted to continue, I have nothing more to say. So, time passed within the story until the moment I entered that room. But, for some reason, Hyunbil didn't seem happy, even though it was the first time in a long time that he had heard something new. You've been through a lot. And it was very intense too. Knowing you, getting out of that room must have been nearly impossible. Yes, she was the only one who knew. Not the strong and unbeatable barbarian, Bjorn Yandel, but the weak and ordinary Korean, Lee Han-soo. I felt strange. The more still I was, the more I reasoned, the more it seemed like something was going to spill out of me. So I cleared my throat and changed the subject. Cough. And you, do you intend to continue living like this? For now, yes, The answer came without a single second of hesitation. After thinking for a while, I asked directly, "Why are you doing all this?" The question carried multiple meanings. Perhaps that's why the answer was also loaded with meaning. Well, I think I've changed too. As much as you have, Opa. Ever since I came into this world. I understand. I nodded without saying anything. I already had a suspicion. I was also the only person in this world who knew Kang Yeon-beol, the Korean woman who existed before all this. Maybe she saw a bit of the old me when she looked at me, but to act like this, with such loyalty, that meant she had really changed a lot. So, about the Department of Homeland Security. From what I've heard from what you've told me, I think it's almost certain they'll accept. And then what? What do you intend to do? I explained all my plans to Yeon-beol, leaving nothing out. She, who had already worked in public institutions on Earth, corrected several details that I had missed. Perhaps because of this, a question arose for her. But, Opa, do you really think you can do all this by yourself? No, I don't think so. So how are you going to do it? Now I'll have to find someone. But don't worry, there's someone who can probably do this much better than I can. Oh, that's great that you already have a candidate. Who is it? Yeon-beol asked, full of curiosity. I just looked at her in silence. So, what are you pretending not to know, after you were the one who offered all that temptation in the first place? Chapter 870, Influx, 5/5. To summarize the outcome, I didn't get Yeon-beol's approval. She said she wanted, at least, to protect this place until Rana woke up. Therefore, I only said a few persuasive words and left. After all, insisting any longer there would have an adverse effect. What would she do after Rana opened his eyes? If she gathered the evil spirits into a group, she would gain a small faction. Rana wanted to perform the embodiment of evil spirits, and so on. The fact that she hadn't vehemently refuted my persuasion already meant that, in reality, she was practically half convinced. Therefore, that part was something I could leave for the future. You're going out today too, Naya? The next day, I also started my schedule by leaving home early in the morning. However, it wasn't an appointment I had originally planned. Where are you going this time? Gnome Tree. Why go there suddenly? It's just that something suddenly occurred to me. It was a somewhat impulsive decision. While talking to Yeon-beol, who was locked in her room, I ended up remembering the dragon brat. Well, that wasn't the only reason I was dedicating an entire day to going to Gnome Tree. DRRR. I took the military teleporter, went to Gnome Tree in an instant, and then traveled by carriage to the sacred land of dragons. Welcome, Baron Yondell. The guard at the sanctuary gate was quite familiar. Come to think of it, it seemed like it was always the same man every time I came. Isn't there even a shift system here? I found that quite barbaric, but since I couldn't interfere in the internal well-being of another race, I didn't say anything. Oh, of course, but I had to mention one thing. Now I am a Viscount. Oh, really? I apologize for being rude. It's been quite a while, hasn't it? Did the news take a long time to get around? I don't pay much attention to worldly affairs. If it's something I need to hear, sooner or later it will reach my ears. Those were words that, somehow, sounded like an epiphany, but I decided not to absorb them. If it was something I wanted to seriously consider, sooner or later I would. There's no need to rush, right? Is the tribe chief inside? The ancient dragon is already waiting for you. Oh, how did the tribe chief know I was coming? Inside the gnome tree, there is nothing that the dragon ancestor does not know. Really? So maybe he also knows about the first time I met Biko Lee here, a long time ago. How fascinating. I didn't know the tribe's chief possessed such an ability. If you're so curious, go find him and ask. The ancient dragon is waiting for you. Frankly, he insists on emphasizing dragon ancestor. Why does each race have a different name for its tribal chief? It would be easier and more intuitive to simply use tribal chief, avoiding any chance of confusion. You finally arrived. I got out of the carriage, climbed the steep walkway for quite a while, and as soon as I arrived at the Dragon Temple, I was able to meet the chief of the Dragon Men tribe, Mr. Dragon. Your tone indicates that you were expecting me, doesn't it? Of course. I was the one who asked him to come visit me anytime during the last race meeting. He pretends not to, but Pen is really eager to see him. Oh, that's right. I had forgotten. But seeing him talk about this sort of thing, it seems like you came for another reason, doesn't it? Tell me, to begin with. I'm also curious to know the reason for your visit. Mr. Dragon expressed more curiosity than annoyance, which allowed me to present my subject with a bit more peace of mind. I want to receive another dragon blessing. Getting stronger is always the right thing to do. The dragon's blessing. This was the race's exclusive secret art, like the barbarian spirit mark or the Tyrian soul beast. In the past, in exchange for returning the Dragon Slayer sword to their tribe, I received the Earth Dragon's blessing, something never granted to outsiders. The trace of it was still carefully hidden beneath the sole of my foot. In any case, that wasn't what mattered. Back then, the little dragon girl pen warned me, almost as a warning, after finishing the blessing, if you're thinking about it, choosing multiple blessings isn't allowed. Your body won't be able to handle it, especially if you're a barbarian. I, being a barbarian, couldn't bear it. Even among the dragon race, the overload was so intense that, with the exception of Mr. Dragon, few had engraved 2 or more blessings. Convinced by the sincere warning, I succumbed to greed. But, another blessing, you say? Now, the situation had changed somewhat. I had consumed the essence of tears and become virtually immortal. I could easily endure even 2 or 3 blessings. Well, the pain would be much worse than before, of course. I don't know what idea came over you, but it seems like you suddenly had a strange thought. Mr. Dragon put his hand to his forehead, as if he already had a headache. Don't give me the story about my body not being able to handle it. The me of today is a completely different person from the one I was back then. I can't deny that part. But this is a completely different story. Try to convince me. I don't know why I should bother convincing you. I was thinking of activating brainless barbarian mode, but Mr. Dragon continued. I'm telling you this to avoid causing further problems if I simply refuse. Does this guy read minds too? I wasn't sure, but Mr. Dragon spoke as if you were scolding a spoiled child. The blessing does not impose a burden only on the physical body. The real problem lies in the mind. No, to be more precise, it falls upon the spirit. Spirit? Keep listening. I found the subject somewhat unexpected, but I pursed my lips at Mr. Dragon's expression, which told me not to interrupt. The physical body is the vessel that contains the spirit, and no matter how hard and resilient you become, it's impossible to increase the total capacity of that vessel. Oh, and are dragons different? We are different. Mr. Dragon responded seriously to my sarcastic comment. I don't say this to imply that we are a superior race, but simply to point out a racial difference. After all, it's a fact that we've been given an unimaginably long time, something other races can't have. Think about it. The day a barbarian born today dies of old age after a peaceful life, I will still be exactly as I am now. I understand what he was trying to say. However, one thing intrigued me. So, does that mean that no matter how much my spiritual level increases, it's the same thing? I wondered if the concept of vessel of the spirit mentioned by the dragon man had any relation to the level. Mr. Dragon's answer was immediate. It's the same thing. Even if the muddy water in the container becomes cleaner and purer, the container itself doesn't get bigger. Therefore, abandon greed, for it may be that your spirit suffers a permanent deficiency. I have in my old records stories of how most humans who received a second blessing became idiots. So, that's it. I clicked my tongue, but asked pointedly, but what if, despite all that, I say that I need to receive it? In that case, I would say the following. Then Mr. Dragon, sitting on the throne, looked at me. First of all, why should we grant your request? You didn't bring us the Dragon Slayer sword this time, did you? Oh, well, last time if you're referring to the execution of the Dragon Slayer and the recovery of the heart, I can annul the agreement made back then and do what you want. Would you do that? I couldn't answer. After all, the agreement that Mr. Dragon was now referring to was the pact. In exchange for the Dragon Slayer's heart, I received the promise of support from the dragon race, although there was the condition that the king should not be involved. I said I would consider it if the situation allowed me to confront the king. It wasn't a promise worth breaking just to receive another blessing. Mr. Dragon knew this, and that's why he was offering to cancel the existing agreement and make a new one, if I wanted. This was something I couldn't, under any circumstances, cancel. Therefore, okay, the dragon's blessing is completely out of the question. I let go of all greed. After all, it was a dangerous choice that could have made me an idiot. It wasn't worth risking everything for. However, perhaps my quick and selfless abandonment was unexpected. You gave in faster than I thought, and you don't seem to intend to play the stubborn one. To be honest, I was just testing the waters. I shrugged jokingly, but Mr. Dragon's expression was strangely serious. Is this idea still valid? What are you talking about? From the royal family. I realized that Mr. Dragon had interpreted my submission, right after the mention of the pact, in a different way. Of course, I didn't intend to correct him. After all, it wasn't exactly a misunderstanding. What can I do? I sincerely hope that situation never comes to pass, but one must be prepared. If the time comes to fight, I will have no choice but to fight. Mr. Dragon's expression upon hearing my words was peculiar. I couldn't figure out what he was thinking, and he ended up not verbalizing his thoughts, a fascinating and enviable stance, indeed. With the subject of the dragon's blessing now concluded, my conversation with Mr. Dragon also ended there. Before you go, see Pen, you'll be surprised too. I'll see her, but there's someone else I'd like to see first. If you're talking about Ravi, the child is not in the Holy Land. Huh? Oh, did I misinterpret it? No, that wasn't it. The person I wanted to see before the little dragon girl was Ravine, the fellow dragon who accompanied me on the expedition to the frozen rock. I was thinking of convincing her to come with me to the labyrinth, in case she wasn't doing anything. It's her. But what do you mean? She's not here. Do you know when she's coming back? I don't know, but don't get your hopes up too high. She hasn't returned since the last time you came to the Holy Land. What? Since that time? If you happen to have any news about her, please let me know later. I'm starting to get curious about what that child has been up to. That was absurd. Was he really a decent father? If she hadn't shown up for years, shouldn't he be worried and think she was missing? That thought occurred to me first, but it was a purely non-draconian mindset. For a dragon, this is just an extremely short period of time. In that case, like a barbarian, I had nothing more to say. Pen, the little dragon girl I met after the meeting with Mr. Dragon, was different in many ways from the last time I saw her. I don't know about her mental state, but at least her outward appearance had certainly changed. That way, we can't call her little dragon brat anymore. She had grown quite a bit taller, not to the point of being the size of an adult woman, but she was slightly taller than Raven. Why did it take you so long to come? You said you would come often. Her way of speaking was the same, but perhaps it was because her appearance had changed so much. Somehow, I felt more strangeness than joy in seeing her again. Hey, it seems you're surprised to see me, aren't you? I told you. Just wait a little while and I'll look just like my big sister. Something wrong? Now you're regretting it? Regretful? It's too late. Liars have already been disqualified. I asked because I couldn't understand what she was saying, but the only answer I received was even more confusing. However, I decided not to think about it too much. Okay, so tell me your stories. My father gave me a summary, but hearing it from you is different. Who knows? If they were interesting stories, I might change my mind. You talk as if you've entrusted me with something. I was a little perplexed, but for the moment, I began to recount the adventures I had accumulated during that time. But what was happening? And then? What happened next? Although that little brat was listening and reacting to every part, I felt a dissonance. Quick, don't stall and tell me. This is the most fun part. For some reason, unlike before, her reaction seemed completely soulless. That way, it's going to be complicated. My periodic encounters with that brat were like a kind of community service, and she couldn't even react properly to such a kind person. Such a badly behaved child didn't deserve to hear my stories. Swish. At that moment, the little dragon girl suddenly placed something quickly in my hand. I looked and it was a scribbled note. Keep talking while you read. What is this? I was inclined to ask when the bratty dragon hurriedly wrote another note and handed it to me. Please save my big sister. The content was still incomprehensible. The big sister was supposed to be Ravine. It seems like my dad wants to kill my big sister. Upon confirming the contents of the next note, I froze, seeing the tense and cautious expression on her face as she surveyed her surroundings. Chapter 871, Newcomers, 1/3. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. The ancestral dragon Lapir, the leader of the dragon people and father of two seemingly naive daughters. However, this friendly-looking fellow is trying to kill one of his daughters. I was about to ask what it meant when the little dragon covered my mouth with her hand, which was the size of a pebble. Then she slowly released it and pointed repeatedly to the note she had first given me. Don't stop and keep reading while we talk. Okay, if she wants to hear the story, I should continue the conversation. I was extremely curious to know why she had written that note, so I kept pace with her and continued our conversation. With that, the little dragon seemed more relieved and started sending notes again. A year ago, my sister secretly contacted me without Dad knowing. She said she was worried about me and asked me not to tell Dad that she had come. I asked why Dad couldn't know, and she said she needed to hide because he was trying to hurt her. I asked her what on earth that meant, but she didn't give me any details. She just said she wanted to see me one last time and, for some reason, apologized. The conversation went only that far. My sister's face suddenly hardened, and she left in a hurry, saying that this room was also being watched. A few minutes later, Dad arrived. He told me only that he had come to see me for a moment because he missed me, but his expression didn't say the same. He looked very distressed, and the way he quickly looked around, searching for something as soon as he entered the room. Also, the whole situation was very strange, but I couldn't ask Dad anything. My sister told me not to trust him too much before she left. Thus, the story of the little dragon came to an end, returning to its starting point. Please save my sister. Actually, when I first received this note, I thought, what on earth is she saying? But after hearing the whole story, my head started to ache a little. Could it be that, at this point, there really is a secret I don't know about within the dragon people? I can't help but believe it, but it's also hard to believe. I simply didn't know what to do. Looking at her desperate expression, it seemed to be true, but remembering the kind-hearted dragon ancestor, who loved his daughters, the first thing that came to mind was that perhaps there had been some misunderstanding. However, there's something that bothers me. This idea occurred to me suddenly after hearing today's story. After all, the first time I met Raven was on the expedition to the icy rock. Although I discovered the truth later, that expedition was a huge fraud. We were all expendable people, disposable parts. More than that, these were people who needed to die so that others could benefit, a thorn in their side. It was with adventurers like this that more than 90% of the expedition to the frozen rock was made up. Of course, Raven was one of them. I received a promise from the Marquis in exchange for this work, but, it seems, he had no intention of keeping that promise. That's what Raven said while the expedition members gathered and confessed why they had been dragged there. Of course, at the time, I didn't think much of it. To me, Marquis Tercerium back then was just a nefarious villain, capable of doing such a thing just to cheat someone. So, I let it go. But, thinking about it now, what happened next is a little strange. Did Raven, who returned alive to the city, manage to obtain that one promise the Marquis had made her? No, not for starters. Does it make sense for the Marquis to send Mr. Dragon's daughter into a situation of certain death just to default on a debt? On second thought, that's not reasonable at all. Unless the ancient dragon himself was behind it. Son of a bee. Nothing. I accidentally bit my tongue, concerned about the little dragon's mental health. I didn't reveal all my thoughts. I'm going now. I'll be right back, so don't worry too much. Faced with this, the little dragon couldn't say anything and only gave me a troubled look, and I just shook my head silently, as if telling her to leave everything to me. In truth, what's happening within the dragon people isn't my problem, but I'll have to investigate. For some reason, I feel like something is very strange. Time has flown by since I returned from the sacred land of dragons. I promised the little dragon, Pen, that I would investigate, but I haven't had any luck. And how can I find Mr. Dragon's daughter if even he can't? I was at a loss as to where to begin investigating. If Ghostbusters were still intact, perhaps I could have gleaned clues from player information, but that's not possible now. I will continue investigating, and if it doesn't work out, I will have to speak openly with Mr. Dragon. Therefore, I put the search for Raven on hold for now. After all, the labyrinth was about to reopen. With that, I also set aside other tasks and dedicated myself entirely to preparations for the exploration. In other words, I dedicated myself to talent recruitment. First, there's me, Ainer, and Miss Shah. That's 3 of us, plus 5 members of the Armin Exploration Group, making a total of 8 people. The loss of some members of the Armin Exploration Group was significant. Some people felt disillusioned by recent events and considered retirement, and the previous priestess left the clan due to a call from the order, which was struggling with staff shortages. The fact that they only accepted half of my proposal must have been largely due to the lack of these members. Anyway, furthermore, I received firm confirmation that GM would be included in the next exploration after this one. That priestess is a shame. The priestess I met during the dimensional collapse belonged to the sacred musical triad. I thought it would be perfect if she joined the group, and I even went to look for her at the church, but I was firmly rejected. She said that if I needed her help, I should accumulate merit points at the temple and make a formal request to the order. Damn religious people. The stubbornness of the 3 churches was indescribable. Even if you become a nobleman, found a great clan, or are even the chief of a tribe, to obtain a priestess, you need to faithfully fulfill the missions given by the order and accumulate merit points. Well, from their point of view, this was natural. In a way, it was thanks to this principle that they never yielded their position in this labyrinth city and became so strong. I was trapped in the first basement, went through war, and experienced a dimensional collapse. How do you expect me to complete the temple missions? Am I doomed to never have a priest in this life? Fortunately, for the new shield barbarian, the presence of a priest isn't so crucial, which is a relief. I'm Boda Jackson. Thank you for choosing me. I will do my best. Oh, I also hired a new navigator. Since there's information that a new island has been added to the 6th floor, I figured having a navigator would be essential. He doesn't have the same skill as Orion, but frankly, where else would I be lucky enough to find a navigator of that caliber? I simply chose someone reasonably good from the Navigators Guild. It's a sort of mercenary contract, where he receives a fixed salary plus performance bonuses, instead of a profit-sharing arrangement. With that, we are a 9 for now. Since I really wanted to recruit 3 more people to form a group of 12, I searched in various places and, finally, 1 more member was added. Abman, I didn't imagine you would accept. Did I seem like such an unscrupulous guy? Whether you have scruples or not, you have a family. It's because of my family that I need to enter the labyrinth anyway. Since that's the case, it's best that I have the help of my contacts. Mr. Bear said that, but it wasn't entirely convincing. Of course, keep it a secret from my wife. Understand? Well, what else would it mean for him to add a sentence like that? Obviously, Mrs. Ursa strongly objected. She must have said something like, hero or not, if you hang out with him, you certainly won't live long. With Mr. Bear, that makes 10 people. Even considering the GM's involvement, the remaining spots still bothered me, but I decided to halt recruitment for additional members for now. It's better to have a vacant spot than to accept just anyone. After all, the group size in Dungeon and Stone has never been 6, but rather 5 people. With that in mind, I was focusing solely on preparations for the next exploration when a completely unexpected person handed me a resume, Malid Kevrin, the second in command of the Sawtooth clan. Oh, should I say former second in command? I heard the clan disbanded soon after they returned to the city, You want to go into the labyrinth with us? Are you serious? Yes, I heard they were looking for people. Isn't that true? Kevrin's voice showed no hesitation, as if he had made a firm decision. This made everything even stranger. Well, seeing as he stayed until the end during the Battle of the Lord of Tears, he seemed like a trustworthy person. To be honest, I thought it would all be over when we got back to the city. People are like that. In moments of emotion, they make irrational decisions, but after the moment passes, they start doing the math. If you're doing this because you feel indebted to me, you don't have to. You did your part, and the agreement ended there. That's not the reason. So, why? Oh, you don't have anyone to go into the labyrinth with? I think there has never been a period in history when high-level adventurers were as rare as they are now. They say that if you surpass the 5th level, you get calls from everywhere. And you? I won't say I received few calls. If that's the case, it becomes more difficult to understand. Like a good barbarian, I went straight to the point. So, why are you here? Kevrin didn't answer immediately. He just paused briefly, as if organizing his thoughts, and then spoke in a somewhat awkward voice. Because then those things won't happen. What? I decided that, with Viscount Yondell, this would not happen. Neither would I be abandoned, nor would I abandon anyone. It certainly won't happen. If someone did that, I wouldn't stand idly by. Well, in short, he went through a near-death experience, reevaluated his life, and had an existential crisis. In concluding my reflection, I said, I am not Viscount Yondell. From now on, call me Captain, It's extremely difficult to recruit a third-level adventurer these days. There was no reason to stop him from joining, since he volunteered. It would be a lie to say that nothing was bothering me, but 2 former vice-captains of Sawtooth. That's a very strange coincidence. I'm counting on you from now on, I'm counting on you too, Captain. With that, all the members of this expedition were defined, and the remaining time was spent meeting to practice or plan the exploration. And time flew by, the day has arrived, Naya. It seems strange, after months of time off, after all, the last time we went in was after a long time. Finally, the day to enter the labyrinth dawned. Chapter 872, Newcomers, 2/3. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. The long-awaited day of entering the labyrinth had arrived. I quickly concluded a passing ceremony for this round and personally led the young warriors towards the dimensional plaza. Incidentally, the number of young warriors exceeded several hundred. After all, due to the labyrinth's closure, there were accumulated warriors who had gone through the rite but had not yet made their first exploration. This must be happening with other races as well. Of course I didn't see any other races heading towards the dimensional plaza. They would enter the labyrinth through the plazas of the areas adjacent to their respective sacred lands. The labyrinth. I can see the labyrinth. The dimension of the sacred battle. Bjorn, son of the great warrior Yondell, led us to the labyrinth. The young warriors grew extremely excited as the dimensional plaza became visible. How cute. Although it was a tradition for the barbarians to wander through an unknown city and only then enter the labyrinth, I ended that tradition in my generation. In any case, even if the tradition had remained, it wouldn't make sense in the current environment. Since all the buildings are crumbling, it's easy to find the way. The 7th district, where we were, was the most damaged in the previous war, and, with the situation worsening due to the closure of the labyrinth, it could not be properly restored. Unexpectedly, there are many people. The square was busier than I expected. I had imagined that, since the number of people settled in the 7th district was small, most would have gone to untouched squares. Wow, it's Bjorn, Yandel's son. I told you, I knew we'd be able to see it if we came here. Look, there are a lot of barbarians there too, aren't there? They chose to come here to see me. I wondered what kind of reasoning that was, but seeing the square teeming with people made me feel like I was seeing what it used to be like. Well, only superficially. There are only true beginners. Over 70% of the people gathered in the square were novices without the proper equipment. 20% were lower-level adventurers with basic equipment or in teams, but who had never climbed above the 5th floor. The remaining 1% were just above that, intermediate level. However, they would be from the lower end of that level. Most would primarily explore the 5th floor, and a minority would be on the 6th. There would be virtually no one above the 7th floor. It is likely that those at that level were summoned by royalty in the previous round, entering the labyrinth in secret and perishing. I've become a top-level adventurer, relatively speaking. It suddenly occurred to me that this might be the reason why retired adventurers have been reversing their retirements en masse and trying to return to the business. If they manage to establish themselves on the 5th floor, they'll never have to worry about taxes again. It's a sort of cash cow. It's possible to live like a property owner, where money comes in continuously, as long as you establish a clan and occupy an empty hunting spot. In fact, because of this, since the labyrinth's inception, certain islands on the 5th and 6th floors have always been inaccessible to ordinary adventurers due to disputes of interest between clans. Then I'll go ahead, chief of the tribe, I too will return after accomplishing great things as chief of the tribe, Baal. The novice barbarians, unable to wait any longer, shouted and entered the labyrinth. I was about to join my companions when, a young warrior gazing distractedly at the open portal of the labyrinth caught my attention. His name was, Beetle, the third son of Kidgel, a young warrior who had completed the passing ceremony today and one of the few who did not shout the name of the ancestral god at the beginning of the ceremony. In other words, a player of Earth. That attitude bothers me a little. I know he's not used to the name yet, but he needs to adapt quickly. This cruel world never waits for us, Beetle, the third son of Kidgel. I cleared my throat to get his attention and called his name again. He startled and looked at me, chief of the tribe, what are you doing here? All the other warriors have gone into the labyrinth. The boy seemed very confused and couldn't say anything. Fortunately, he realized he shouldn't appear suspicious. Well, that's also thanks to the information I gave him. Since I started conducting the initiation ceremony, the number of incidents where someone was unmasked as an evil spirit and executed has dropped to 0. But, paradoxically, this execution event also served as a device to make the newcomers aware that this world is hostile to us. Therefore, it seems there are no evil spirits this time. As everyone knows, as soon as an evil spirit that steals bodies is seen, it must be killed. I always make comments like this during the initiation ceremony to convey information to the newcomers, but perhaps he didn't understand it well. Are you perhaps afraid to enter the labyrinth? Even when the tribe chief asked, the boy just trembled and didn't answer. If he had any discernment, he would have known that this behavior alone seemed suspicious, but it's not like I don't understand. Suddenly, I remembered the day I first entered the labyrinth. In fact, I was similar to this boy, seeing the barbarians enter the labyrinth full of enthusiasm. I, on the contrary, wanted to run away. After all, for me, it was a game. To actually enter the labyrinth and fight monsters? That was absurd. I knew rationally that I had to do it, but the decision wasn't easy. I only managed to take the first step into the labyrinth after gaining courage from talking to Ainer. Therefore, this boy will need that too. A warm hand to push him to take that first step more easily. Exactly like that. Smack. I slapped him on the back. The boy jumped, screamed, and then looked at me with angry eyes. Why did you hit me? Your eyesight has improved a lot. Yes, this is better than being frozen, and it suits a barbarian. I've already given the whip. Now it's time for the treat. I understand your nervousness. Entering the labyrinth is always frightening. I felt it too. The boy didn't say anything. He just looked at me as if he suspected I was throwing out bait to test him. That suspicion is a good thing, Beetle, the third son of Kidgel. Believe in your robust constitution, in the intelligence of a warrior that will never be broken, and in the reality that it is better to fight to the death than to die of hunger. If you simply believe in these 3 things until the end, you will survive for a very long time. That was my advice, and I didn't bother waiting for a response. I simply patted him on the back, a gentler touch than before, looked away, and left. Well, I'm going. I'm hungry. In fact, I didn't even look back, continuing on to the meeting point with my companions. When I returned to the square to enter the labyrinth, he was nowhere to be found. Did he go in? Or did he turn around and run away? The curiosity arose briefly, but did not last long. What are you doing, Naya? Aren't you coming in? Well, if fate wills it, we will meet again. You have entered the crystal cave on the 1st floor, the most familiar place for all adventurers. 1st floor, the crystal cave. The dazzling gleam of the crystals, the cave illuminated by a soft light. Those exploring for the first time feel an unfamiliar melancholy, but those with some experience actually feel safe. For, as they continue exploring, they discover that there is no place as safe as the 1st floor. It was natural to feel at ease. Badum. His heart was pounding. It wasn't a pleasant echo of anticipation, but a low beat, like when you have a premonition. Badum. What is this? Could it be post-traumatic stress disorder? Although it was clearly a normal view from the 1st floor, his heart pounded incessantly, filled with anxiety. It was as if, at any moment, a ZZT noise would erupt and the whole world would crumble. Bjorn, is everything alright? It's alright. I was just distracted for a moment. It seemed like something was wrong in his mind, but he did his best not to show it and ignored it. Well, it must be because this is the first exploration since that incident. It'll pass soon. It will pass, won't it? A new wave of anxiety arose, fearing that this would persist, so I hurried to check my surroundings. The members of Team 1, who had entered the labyrinth with him under the bonding spell, were visible. Miss Shaw, Mr. Bear, Garden Coulter of the Armin Exploration Group, Malid Kevrin, former member of Sawtooth. Furthermore, there's Boda Jackson, the navigator hired as a mercenary. Team 1 consisted of 6 people in total. Ainer was transferred to Team 2, led by Armin, because they needed more fighters on the front lines. If everyone is ready, we can start moving forward. Next, I started exploring and increased the speed, but in reality, I couldn't reach the pace I expected. The reason was very simple. In this round, more than 90% were beginners. Wow, this is the first time the first floor has been this crowded. The newly arrived newcomers blocked the paths, acting as obstacles. Normally, more than 90% of those who entered went straight to the upper floors, but this time it was the opposite. The newcomers had no intention of leaving their starting point immediately. On the contrary, they admired their surroundings as if it were something new, sought companions to move with, or shouted upon seeing it. It's Bjorn Yondell. Am I your friend, by any chance? Wow, he answered me. That wasn't easy. The atmosphere was so different from normal that it was difficult to adjust. If Nork were here too, it would be even harder for me to adjust. The good news was that the granting of exploitation rights for the labyrinth to Nork had been postponed. Although they had launched a brainwashing-level opinion war, the proportion of resistance was still considerable. At the earliest, next month. At the latest, in 3 months. For this reason, time was of the essence in this exploration. And why wouldn't it be? Despite the various institutional mechanisms that had been created in the labyrinth, the fist was closer than the law. With Nork roaming freely, I would have to move with more caution than usual. The adventurers of Nork, to begin with, must be, at a minimum, intermediate-level adventurers. This was also a very stifling part for me. In practice, from the 6th floor upwards, Nork would be the majority, not the natives of Raftonia. In other words, I didn't have much time left to do everything I wanted. Phew, it's such a relief to get out to the outskirts. I feel like I can breathe again. So, I'll increase the speed again. After leaving the central area, which could be called the starting point, the blocked path was completely clear, and I could really accelerate. Well, even so, I lost first place. Shwa. The portal was already open, proving that someone had already passed through. That was something I expected. The newcomers crowded so tightly around us that it took a while to get out of the center. Besides, the initial location hadn't been good. You have entered the 2nd floor Goblin Forest. Even after reaching the 2nd floor, I ran as if I were doing a speedrun. But I also failed to be the first to unlock the 3rd floor. You have entered the Pilgrim's Path on the 3rd floor. It was a bit disappointing. Tisk. I wish I could have gotten some free EXP before Nork arrived en masse. Even if there weren't any high-level adventurers, we were too slow. Our arrival time on the 3rd floor was in the afternoon of the 3rd day. Considering that the initial opening usually occurred, on average, in the afternoon of the 2nd day, it was ridiculously late. Could that be why? When we passed through the Green-Tail Swamp and arrived at a Temple of Sculptures, Team 2 had already arrived and was hunting. You're here. We were starting to get worried, thinking something had happened. Sorry. It was because of the adventurers who were clinging to us on the 1st floor. Were we still lucky? Before we arrived, Team 2 had already obtained an unnamed fragment. However, it's not going to work. After that, luck wasn't on our side. Another fragment appeared on the 5th day, but unfortunately, it was a duplicate of those we had already obtained, and I cut my losses immediately. Can I get 2 more fragments here before the 7th day ends? Go back down to the 1st floor, and open the portal to the 1st basement? From what I could see, it was impossible for now. No, actually, it would be the same next time. We need magicians. Even if we had arrived in time, the outcome would have been the same. With the current members, it was difficult even to open the portal to the 1st basement. Well, there was no guarantee that we could get in, even if they opened it. I just wanted to confirm whether or not I can open the portal. Okay, we do that when we were better prepared. Things usually went wrong when I rushed things. With that, I put aside my disappointment and set up camp. After all, we hadn't slept well because we were mining for fragments. The plan was to rest for a whole day and then continue exploring. But, as a result, we failed to get adequate rest. There were mysterious intruders who had found the camp. Were they unaware of the unwritten rule that approaching another team's camp in the labyrinth was considered a hostile act? Or were they planning a hostility and therefore didn't care? It would have been better if it had been the second option. But, unfortunately, they belonged to the first. Stop, don't come any closer. Naya, hey, I told you not to come. Oh, dear sister, you're so beautiful. Why are you acting so rude? No, this isn't about being rude. You can't do that. You'll cause a huge problem, for real. We're not causing any harm, are we? We're getting exhausted too, and we're just going to rest a little here on the side, right? Or should we rest alone in this dangerous place and risk getting hurt? As if the warnings of Miss Shaw, who was on guard, were not worth heeding, they boldly advanced into our territory. Only then did we realize their identity. Incomprehensibly bold and violent. The kind that not even the strength of a giant could control. Oh, wait a minute. Your sister's face looks familiar. Miss Shaw Karlstein. It's Miss Shaw Karlstein. What? So Bjorn Yandel is here too. Kaya. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Their name was Rookies. Chapter 873, Newcomers, 3/3. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. Chapter 873, Newcomers, 3/3. My head was numb, not just because I had just woken up, but because the situation before my eyes was completely incomprehensible. Wow, look, it's Bjorn Yandel. He's so handsome. What is this? Was I still dreaming? Or was it a hallucination? Excuse me, adventurers? In the labyrinth, approaching another adventurer is extremely dangerous. Armin tried to defuse the situation using sensible words, but it was useless. Don't worry, we won't do anything dangerous. No, that's not what I mean. Hey, Viscount Yandel, look this way, please. What was unfolding was so absurd that not even anger arose. What are these crazy people? Pure curiosity, 100%. After composing myself a bit and observing their faces, one feature immediately stood out. The deplorable state of their equipment would suggest they had just entered the labyrinth. This was probably their first exploration. However, there was only one reason why they managed to climb to the third floor in that state, thanks to that overwhelming quantity. 32 people. I could understand why Miss Shaw and Armin couldn't handle their intrusion properly. In fact, even my head went numb when I saw that number. What are you? I'm Amy, no, I didn't ask for names. How do you manage to walk around in groups of more than 30 people? You must not have formed a bond in the city. I asked the question, completely perplexed, and the adventurer, who was laughing and fearlessly poking my muscle with her finger, answered, we met on the second floor. Surprisingly, it was the first time they had all met, there were too many people on the second floor. So Mr. Mark here suggested an idea. Get more people together and go straight up to the third floor. Hearing the woman, the man beside her scratched his head awkwardly and continued, of course, if we divide the mana stones by the number of people, there isn't much left over, but since we found better essences here on the third floor, we judged it to be totally worth it. What? Even if they found an essence, 32 people would have to compete with dice. Well, the lucky one could obtain the essence and grow much faster, of course, but it seems everyone else had the same thought, and the third floor is packed too. So we tried to get as far away as possible from where the portal was, and we ended up here. Oh, but who would have thought we'd find Viscount Yandel here? Looks like luck is on our side. Then the man asked me, quite casually, anyway, to get back to where the portal was, that is, where the lizard men appear, could you tell us where to go? Are they really crazy? Are they wandering around the labyrinth without knowing where they are? No, more than that, oh, of course we can't leave right away. Since everyone is exhausted from wandering aimlessly, let's rest a bit here next door. Why the hell are these guys so arrogant? That's not even polite spitting. I wanted to say something, but their innocent expressions, as if they didn't know what the problem was, left me speechless. Haha, after all, we're all adventurers who came to the labyrinth to save the city. Please help us, Viscount Yandel, The same bewilderment I felt was shared by the rest of the group, and sighs broke out everywhere. Are all young people like that today? It's unbelievable. Listening to the conversation makes me feel like I'm going crazy. In my day, even when we went to fetch water from the first floor, we were always on the lookout for other adventurers. It's impossible to be so clueless. Listening to the group's complaints made us feel incredibly old, but at least we understood the current situation. I never thought I would experience something like this. It was like the initial stages of an online game. Now, the first and second floors were supposed to be safe zones throughout. The newcomers were supposed to have taken charge of everything, and the monsters were killed as soon as they reappeared. Therefore, overcrowding forced them to move to the third floor. What is this? Bjorn? Are my eyes deceiving me? They're clearly human. Right, a lack of common sense that even shocked Aner. I wondered how the world had reached this point, but at the same time, I understood. From what I see, they don't seem to realize how dangerous this is. In truth, these guys were victims. The nobles had placed boys and girls who had barely reached adulthood in the labyrinth, under the pretext of the time that new adventurers were needed. It was impossible that this crowd had received a proper education. On the contrary, only misinformation had been injected into them. After all the media had brainwashed them in this way in recent months. Even now, the labyrinth must have been, in their minds, a beautiful place, full of dreams, romance, and opportunities. Hey, kids, stop being stubborn and go already. Go away, Naya, Miss Shaw said as if she were calming a child and looked at me. I felt strange. You know that feeling? Like a girlfriend who feels tense, afraid that her gangster boyfriend might do something else stupid. That's exactly how it felt. If you keep acting like this, it could cause a huge problem. Go now, okay? So it wasn't just my imagination. Miss Shaw was genuinely worried about those clueless newcomers. Well, who does she think I am? I honestly thought about it. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. The only way to have a normal conversation with irrational people is for me to become irrational myself. But, Armin, yes, go ahead, give them space beside the camp. When they've rested enough, tell them the way to the Green-Tail Swamp. Are you sure? I have. I finished speaking and lay back down in my sleeping bag. There was no need for me to intervene to inject common sense into them. I wonder how many of them will manage to return alive. The labyrinth is not a kind place. After camp ended, we dismissed a group of rookies, who had rested enough and went our separate ways. Oh, of course, parting ways with those empty-headed individuals didn't happen without incident. Viscount Yondell, by any chance, if it's not too much trouble, couldn't we just continue following you? Since we know each other, it's destiny, and we promise we won't be a burden in any way. Surprisingly, they went a step further and asked to be carried by me, whom they barely knew, and I immediately refused. And they say he's a hero, but the rumors aren't reliable, it's not as if you'd lose anything if we accompanied you. Isn't it just envy at seeing others succeed? Bjorn Yondell, you won't have much to do for a while. The newcomers grumbled as they left, as if they had completely forgotten the consideration we had shown them that day. At that moment, I wondered if I should personally fix the problem that had arisen in their minds, but I decided to simply leave it to fate. As long as they continued their profession as adventurers, the labyrinth would surely teach them many things. We entered the Tower of Heaven from the 4th floor. We've entered the Great Demon Kingdom of the 5th floor. Next, we continued our exploration, quickly breaking through the 4th floor and reaching the 5th. The front of the portal to the Great Demon Kingdom was traditionally a historic meeting point, always crowded with clans waiting for their companions. However, there are very few people here. Although the absolute number was large, it was not comparable to the norm. The extermination of high-level adventurers is the main reason. In fact, over 90% of the people here must have been intermediate-level adventurers who were already operating on the 5th and 6th floors. That place is good. Since we didn't see Team 2, perhaps we arrived first, so we found a suitable spot and waited. The adventurers who were already there recognized me and stared, but no one dared to approach and speak. Yes, this is the labyrinth. For some reason, this fact was deeply touching. A world of common sense where the truth that the insolent die young holds true. How beautiful, as expected, you arrived first. After settling in and resting for half a day, Team 2, which we were expecting, appeared through the gate. We are very sorry. It was because the Stairway of Wisdom appeared only a few times. Why would that be your fault? In any case, the important thing is that they arrived safely. After joining Team 2, we continued exploring with a group of 11 people in total. Oh, and we chose the Ghost Canyon, the shortest route to the 6th floor. Unexpectedly, there are so many people, we then realized there were more adventurers on the 5th floor than we had expected. Most of the open spots where the monsters reappeared were occupied by adventurers who had arrived first and were hunting. Well, there were still some empty spots, but the most valuable places were, without fail, occupied. However, there wasn't the feeling that the clans were controlling the hunting area as forcefully as before. Hey, we agreed not to touch any monsters that came this way, right? Then sort it out yourselves. What do you expect us to do if they keep attacking us from afar? From what we saw, there were many places where 2 or more teams were sharing a single spawn point to hunt. Of course, there probably weren't many teams large enough to handle a single spawn point completely. They said that many people had retired and returned to work, and that seems to be true. The overall age range seems to have increased quite a bit. Still, the 7th floor and the floors above should be empty. Probably yes. Over 90% of the clans that primarily exploited the 7th floor have been disbanded. It was at that moment, as we perceived the altered atmosphere of the 5th floor and continued descending rapidly. Suddenly, the canyon trembled violently, as if an earthquake had struck. Except for the navigator. No, not even the navigator, who had been brought in as a mercenary, was a veteran who had already been through thick and thin in the labyrinth, so few words were needed. A crack, a breach had opened. Therefore, there was only one thing we had to do immediately. Abman, where is he? There's one nearby. Want to try? I gave a wry smile at Mr. Bear's question, who possessed the talent of a guide. Of course, we hadn't planned the exploration counting on a rift on the 5th floor, but we were adventurers, weren't we? Why refuse a feast that falls right in front of you? I had to try to eat a piece. Abman, you go ahead, don't worry about the monsters. From now on, let's move at full speed. I quickly gave the order and changed formation, and then we ran with all our might, following Mr. Bear's lead. Along the way, we saw other adventurers running aimlessly. A team of 6 people hurriedly crossed a ravine, as if searching for the rift. However, it seemed they didn't have a guide on the team, as they weren't running towards the exact location. It's right there. Next, Mr. Bear, who was leading, pointed hurriedly in one direction. Turning my head to follow the tip of his finger, I saw a portal shimmering at the edge. Wow, a portal of black glow, writhing like a miniature black hole, with a force to suck in anything. It doesn't seem like we arrived late, a rift right at the beginning. Luck is on our side, what are you doing, Bjorn? We have to go inside right now, Einar shouted, sounding very excited, but I stopped in front of the portal and briefly gathered my thoughts, including the Fortress of Souls. There are 12 types in total, the number of rifts that could appear on the 5th floor. But, excluding the Fortress of Souls, which was a unique rift that only opened if certain special conditions were met, there were 11 types left in total, as you know, not everyone will be able to get in. Rifts large enough to accommodate an expedition only appear from the 6th floor upwards. Of the 11 rifts that open on the 5th floor, 10 only allow entry by team unit, and the remaining rift doesn't even allow entry by team unit, but rather by, Bjorn. It wasn't the time for such thoughts. Still, since I had already vaguely organized my ideas along the way, it was easy to decide which members would join, Einar. It wasn't necessary to have 2 warriors, but, due to no, 9,999, beginner's luck, she should be the first to be taken to unexplored areas, Charlotte Emblet. A sorceress is also absolutely necessary, admin. It's more convenient to have a guide in the rift, Miss Shaw, Gartenkeltner. For combatants, I included Miss Shaw, who could find the correct essence, and the exploration group skill user Armin from Team 2. After all, it wasn't good to only take members from Team 1. Well, if that were the reason, Armin would be the ideal talent, but, Armin, I'm sorry, but you need to stay outside. Someone was needed to step in as team leader in his absence. I expected that, but it's a shame. Have a good trip. After finalizing the selection process, I quickly organized the order of entry and hurried into the rift, fearing that it would close if the number of people was filled from another location. And, as soon as I entered and finished assessing the surrounding area, my mouth dropped open in astonishment. All the work of hastily selecting members in front of the gate had been in vain. Who would have thought I'd fall for a 1 in 11 chance? The rift allows entry only by individual unit, not by team unit. The character entered Paradise Island. The salty smell of the sea mingled with a gentle breeze. Was it just my imagination, or was there already a stench of blood mixed in with it?